The September 3rd meeting of the Albany City Council will please come to order. I want to welcome you all here to the meeting of the City Council. I do want to remind you that this is a public meeting of the City Council, and I expect to have civil discourse and respect. So please adhere to that. We do have speaker cards for you. For your convenience, we would like you to give them to the clerk. You will be allotted 2 minutes for a topic. She will call up 3 people at a time, and you could line up against the wall over here. Is there a possibility that you could put that camera somewhere else so people can get through to speak? Can somebody think of where it should be, but so that people can get through? Oh, over here would be better. Thank you. Pledge of Allegiance. Will you please join Councilmember Mass in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call.
Councilmember Atkinson.
Present.
Councilmember Barnes.
Present.
Councilmember Moss.
Here.
Vice Mayor Weil.
Here.
Mayor Thompson.
Present. The council met in closed session for the purpose of discussing with legal counsel pending litigation regarding Government Code Section 54956.9D1, and no action was taken. Next item, please.
Consent calendar. Consent calendar items are considered to be routine by the City Council and will be enacted by one motion. By approval of the consent calendar, the staff recommendations will be adopted unless otherwise modified by the City Council. There will be no separate discussion on these items unless a council member or a member of the audience requests removal of the items from the consent calendar.
Is there any item a member of the council would like to have removed from the consent calendar? Is there any item a member of the public would like to have removed from the consent calendar?
The removal of the people from the vault.
Seeing none, we'll bring this back to council, and the chair will entertain a motion regarding the consent calendar.
I move approval of the consent calendar.
I'll second that.
It has been moved by Vice Mayor Weil and seconded by Councilmember Moss that we approve this consent calendar. Would you please poll the council?
Councilmember Atkinson.
Aye.
Councilmember Barnes.
Aye.
Councilmember Moss.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Weil.
Yes.
Mayor Thompson.
Aye, and the motion carries. Next item, please.
Go to the city public forum announcements for person desiring to address the City Council on an item that's not on the agenda. Please note that city policy limits each speaker to 2 minutes. The Brown Act limits the council's ability to take in or discuss items that are not on the agenda. Therefore, such items are normally referred to staff for comment or to a future agenda.
Is there anyone who would like to address the council on an issue not on the agenda? Okay, seeing no one.
Hi, Amber Whitson, Bulb resident, Albany Bulb resident. I wasn't quite quick enough at looking up where on the consent calendar I believe the disbursement to Shelter Belt Builders, Inc. was. But I went online and I looked up the Bay-friendly guidelines and they didn't stick to them, and I just thought I'd bring up that you guys are about to shell out $7,000 some odd to some guys that didn't do their job, that I did their job for them for free, and still wasn't able to mulch the branches they left behind on the surface whole, but that was in the disbursements. And Like I said, I would have brought it up as an objection to the disbursement to see if you could put it off to another date, but I wasn't quick enough finding it online exactly where in the disbursements that $7,000 some odd dollar payment was. But I just thought I should bring that up. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to address the council on an item not on the agenda? Would you like to come to the podium, please?
Yes, good evening. My name is Bobby Anderson, and there's some issues here that I'm a resident of the Bulb here, but there's some issues here with Amber that I'm not really sure that I want to support, and I think that I'm more efficient communicator when it comes to speaking on things that people need to hear. And get down to efficient business. And there's some things that we need to step up as a community. And right now, I just want to say that I'll be running against Amber, you know what I'm saying, to make a difference with whether if it's in 1 month or whatever. That's it.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak on an item not on the agenda? Seeing no one, next item, please.
Public hearing, review of planning application 12-56, design review and conditional use permit for a roof-mounted AT&T wireless facility at 1495 Solano Avenue. Staff recommendation that the City Council approve Resolution 2013-52, upholding the Planning and Zoning Commission's decision approving design review and a conditional use permit for a new AT&T roof-mounted wireless facility at 1495 Solano, and adopt findings affirming with any modifications the approval of application PA 12-56 by AT&T Wireless.
Okay. Would staff like to start, please?
Yes, good evening. Before you this evening is a call for review of planning application 12-056 for a new wireless facility at 1495 Solano Avenue. This is also the location of the Sunnyside Cafe. AT&T was granted design review and conditional use permit approval through the Planning and Zoning Commission for a new roof-mounted wireless facility on June 26th of this year by a 4-0 vote. This project includes the installation of 12 antennas, which will be contained within a tower element located over the archway entrance to the building facing Solano Avenue. Supporting equipment will be located in the basement of the building and will be completely screened from view. And to put a bit of a picture to this, this is the photo simulation that was provided by AT&T. So the top picture shows the building as it exists currently, and the picture at the bottom shows the proposed antenna enclosure. So this would be the tower element over the main entrance. The Planning Commission reviewed and discussed the project design at length both on April 24th and June 26th. At the April 24th hearing, the Commission provided specific feedback about design modifications, including consolidating the facility to a single tower element and creating an enclosure which would be consistent with the existing architecture of the building. This photo simulation that you're looking at right now reflects the input of the Planning and Zoning Commission. One other thing to note is that as part of their approval, they asked that pilaster details be included. This was the revised detail that AT&T provided for your review this evening, and the difference is extremely subtle. Basically, these column details that you see here have now been included, and that was pursuant to a Planning and Zoning Commission condition. In 2009, the Federal Communications Commission established shot clock provisions for municipal land use planning authorities to ensure a timely process of wireless applications. The FCC's ruling has resulted in a 90-day review limit for co-location sites and a 150-day review for new facilities. Since this is a new facility, the 150-day review applies. This application was initially filed on November 30th of 2012 and was deemed incomplete on December 21st. At the time the incomplete letter was sent, the shot clock stopped, and we waited until that point for the additional information to be filed. So there was a stop on the application until February 1, at which time AT&T provided a revised submittal, and the application was subsequently deemed complete on February 27th. As I mentioned before, this went before the Commission on April 24th and was continued to a date uncertain so that both the city and AT&T could enter into an agreement to extend the shot clock to July 31st, and also to retain the services of a licensed engineer for further third-party analysis. Federal law prescribes a short 30-day statute of limitations for claims based on alleged shot clock violations. To preserve the potential claim against the city, AT&T filed a lawsuit alleging a violation of the shot clock since we had exceeded the limit of review. An extension was agreed to which set that date at July 31. We surpassed that, and here we are reviewing it this evening. The lawsuit was filed last week on August 27th. For the purposes this evening, if the City Council upholds the Commission's approval, AT&T's cause of action would become moot, and it's very likely that AT&T would voluntarily dismiss the case. In the event that the application is denied, AT&T could further amend their complaint. It should be noted, however, that the city made every effort to process the application expeditiously. Public hearings on this application were scheduled as promptly as possible and sometimes in advance of other applications that were submitted on an earlier date. In addition, the city review process was managed so that the Planning and Zoning Commission could take their final action prior to July 31, the expiration of the shot clock. The City Council review this evening was the first available regular meeting date following the receipt of the call for technical review. The municipal code provides the city with the option to retain an independent technical consultant to assist with the analysis. The city's primary consultant on wireless applications is Peter Gruszaka. Mr. Gruszaka is a licensed contractor who works on project and facility management within the wireless industry and also offers consulting services to public agencies. The submitted materials, including the project description, propagation maps, plans, and alternatives analysis, were provided to Mr. Gruszaka for his review. While conducting his review, additional information was requested from AT&T. Mr. Gruszaka reviewed their material and had further questions related to coverage analysis and assumptions that they had made in their propagation models. AT&T responded and indicated that they would provide the information only to a licensed engineer and subject to a non-disclosure agreement. The non-disclosure agreement is a legally binding document which requires that information provided may not be discussed. Mr. Gruszaka retains a contractor's license and is not a licensed engineer. Thus, AT&T was not willing to pursue an NDA with him. This application was initially presented to the Commission on April 24th, and at that time, the Commission continued the application to a date uncertain and directed staff to retain a licensed engineer to complete the review. Staff contacted Mr. Gruszaka for referral of a licensed engineer. He indicated that he was not familiar with any licensed engineers who would be able to assist the city with this review. The consulting firm of RCC Consultants does retain a qualified and licensed engineer on staff. Staff verified that the engineer, Mr. Robert Lopez, maintains a current and valid license with the state of California. And previously, the city had used RCC Consultants to complete third-party peer review of wireless applications. Additionally, they also complete third-party review for the city of Berkeley, and most recently completed a review for a wireless facility at 1861 Solano Avenue, also the Oaks Theater, and that's also an AT&T facility. Upon entering into the consultant services agreement, which city staff prepared with a defined scope of work based solely on Mr. Gruszaka's additionally requested information, RCC entered into the non-disclosure agreement with AT&T releasing the additionally requested information. The RCC provided the city with a supplemental report based on the additional information. This is included as an attachment to your staff report. While it would have been preferable to be able to provide for public review the answers to Mr. Gruszaka's questions, the overall conclusion of the analysis is that there is a coverage gap consistent with public testimony from citizens and businesses who report poor AT&T signal strength in the central portion of the city. And to give you a little more context, These are the coverage maps that were provided. These were actually provided at the end of last week by AT&T and account for the facility you're looking at this evening, 1495 Solano Avenue, and 1861 Solano, which is the Oaks Theater. So this shows the bear with me for a moment. So this is the coverage for the Oaks Theater, which is on the right side. And this is the coverage that would be provided at the 1495 Solano Avenue site. RCC in their supplemental report concluded the following. Number one, the signal level parameters used by AT&T to model on-street, in-transit, and in-building coverage are consistent with signal levels used in the industry by other wireless carriers as design parameters for modeling wireless coverage. Number two, based on the examination of the coverage maps provided by AT&T, there appears to be a coverage gap in the target area with respect to in-vehicle and in-building coverage. The coverage map depicting existing coverage in the proposed target area indicates a lack of in-building coverage and minimal in-transit coverage. And number four, the proposed design is reasonable and consistent with industry practices to fill coverage gaps. RCC, as part of their review, also recommended that a condition of approval be included, providing an updated RF report based on the modified design. AT&T did provide us with that at the June 26th hearing, and that is also included as an attachment to your staff report. We received 15 emails after the packet was released. This information is included at the back of the room in the binder, and all correspondence has been forwarded to the City Council as it has been received. So for your review this evening, you have 5 options for proceeding. Number one, you could affirm the decision of the Planning and Zoning Commission without modification. This results in approval of the project exactly as approved by the Commission. Number two, you could affirm the decision of the Planning and Zoning Commission with modifications. Number three, you could reverse the action of the Planning and Zoning Commission, which would result in denial of the application. Number four, you could return the matter to the Planning and Zoning Commission with some direction on key issues and also an indication as to whether or not you would want to review this at a later date. Or number five, you could take no action, which would result in an approval of the project as approved by the Planning and Zoning Commission. If the council would like to deny the application request, the city would have to demonstrate that there is not a significant gap in coverage or deny the application based on the appearance of the structure. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have, and the applicant is present this evening.
Does council?
I have a question about, there were some questions that our consultant, Peter Grachaka, asked, and what is your knowledge of what happened with those questions?
The questions that were posed by Mr. Grachaka were included in the contract services agreement. They were also forwarded directly to RCC as they completed their analysis. Due to the nature of the NDA, obviously the non-disclosure agreement, I'm sorry. Yes, the non-disclosure agreement. They can't go into the specific details as far as propagation, modeling, and assumptions that were made, but the result of their analysis further concluded that there is a gap in coverage.
Were the questions answered to your satisfaction, or what? That's my question.
Yes, they were.
Quick question. Hammett and Edison did a second RF report after the redesign, is that correct?
That's correct.
Is that the one that's in the packet?
Yes.
Any other questions from council? Okay. The chair will open the public hearing. And again, you're welcome to speak. We ask that you get a card, give it to the clerk, and you will be entitled to 2 minutes on the topic. And she will call up 3 people at a time and ask you to line up over here. So if you would please start.
First 3, Robert Lieber, Alan Kang, Winky Campbell-Notar.
Mayor and Council, Robert Lieber, Albany resident. AT&T is a notorious corporation who is spying on our citizens and now is threatening you with a lawsuit when they didn't provide the information that was required on this application. They forced you, or you hired a consultant, which wasn't the one we hired originally, who asked these same questions, which works for AT&T. They provided you with information that conflicts with their own information that they provided on another site. In other words, they're doing exactly what they want, and be damned the city. I said this before and I'll say it again. If you approve this application, it's just another example of no government at all, at least at this level. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi there, Alan Kane, Solano Avenue Association, Solano Stroll, and just want to chat a little bit about the AT&T proposal. I know that many people have different aversions to this project. They range from safety issues to legal issues and corporate issues. They say you can prove anything by looking things up on the web. I tried. I couldn't find any illnesses that relate to a cell phone tower. There's no doctors here, I assume. I did find a lot of stories about hikers and people who needed to call emergency services, didn't have the opportunity, understand Solano's not a park. The point I'm trying to make is that while we discuss these issues extensively, the rest of the world continues to turn. And I want to talk about Safeway just for a second. So Safeway came to us to expand their store some time ago. And at the time that we have told Safeway, maybe, we have built an entire half a bay bridge. It's open. I crossed it today. So in the 10 years it's taken us to tell Safeway maybe, a bridge is now complete. Verizon, AT&T, Safeway, Whole Foods, while the rest of the Bay Area is building bridges, we're burning them. I smell it in the room. I feel sorry for anybody. At first I was like, AT&T. I'm an AT&T user. I'm not a big fan of big corporations, but I'm at the point now where I feel sorry for them. Because, well, frankly, I feel sorry for anybody who has to go through a city process that involves hitting a moving target, whose bullseye keeps changing location on the board. You just keep paying the bills and absorbing all the costs while we move your pie in the sky around.
Please conclude.
And as a reminder, there's a property owner involved here who would like to enhance the revenue that he earns from his property as well. This is not just an AT&T issue. I'd have a lot more to say. Thank you.
Thank you. And I would ask that you, when you speak, that you address the council. This is a public meeting of the council, so please address the council.
Madam Mayor and members of the council, my name is Winky Campbell-Nothar. I'm here as the Executive Director of the Albany Chamber of Commerce, and I see what we have before us is a procedural issue. We followed this issue throughout the planning and application and reapplication and the planning public hearings, and we urge the council to affirm their decision. They gave it a lot of very careful thought. They asked a lot of questions. I believe the questions surrounding this project have been adequately answered procedurally, and actually there is no other course for the council to take than to affirm the Planning Commission's decision. And that being said, it will very much help our small businesses. We say shop local, come to Albany, shop our small businesses, but if you have a cell phone, well, maybe not, So maybe you won't get coverage here, but I think we need to enhance, our small town atmosphere, and having good cell service is part of that in the 21st century. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next three is Alan Riffer. David Garner, Sarah Sunstein. Which item?
Alan Riffer. As the staff report indicates, staff did their job, and planning and zoning did their job, and not at the 11th hour, not at the 12th hour, but at the 13th hour, here's the city council doing a review of something where the shot clock, the time limits established under federal regulation, was 34 days ago. And I've seen communications from Arrow that talk about various issues, but I haven't seen anything that explains how the shot clock could get extended at this point, so that any review that you're doing at this point is moot because clock expired. So I think the only way out of this situation that has wasted city dollars and AT&T dollars and community dollars and hours is to ratify the action of planning and zoning. Mr. Lieber talked about a threat of a lawsuit. As I've been thinking of this over the weekend, there are certain rights, responsibilities, duties that each of us has, that the city has, and that an applicant has, that a property owner has, that a resident has, and so on and so forth. And I don't think AT&T threatened anything. They protected their rights that are established under the shot clock law. I had wondered why it was necessary to file the suit days before this review, and the answer is there's a statute of limitations. And so to observe, they couldn't go into court next week to say, well, we meant to file before the that provision expired, so they had to protect their rights. The city should protect its rights by ratifying the planning and zoning action.
Thank you.
My name is David. This is my wife, Narit. We live directly behind Sunnyside Cafe.
Would you please speak into the microphone?
We live directly behind the Sunnyside Cafe. That property has been a real pain to us ever since it was built. I was in this room when they had the developers here talk to the city council. There was to be no on-site cooking. We know better than that. And there was to be no trash where you could see it. We know better than that. We put up with rats running in and out between the trash. We see papers flying all over the street. Now, granted, the tenants try their hardest, but that building has been a real problem. When I call the city, I never get an answer back. Never. Okay? That's a problem. I don't like living 65 feet away from where the cell tower is going to be. Okay, I know that it's within permissible limits or allowable limits with Verizon and other carriers. Who says that's safe? That's just allowable. That's what they use. There's no, my brother died of Agent Orange, and they said, oh, just go home with take 2 aspirins, it's post-traumatic syndrome. He died. He had Agent Orange brain cancer. 9 years we put up with that. It's not right because this is all corporate America running over you guys.
Thank you. You have 44 more seconds. Do you want to add anything?
I just want to say that I'm very, very upset about all the situation that, they're showing this beautiful building and all this coverage, but what goes underneath scares me. I don't want to get cancer. I don't want my kids or my family or my neighbor. I'm sure that whoever, if they will build something like that next to your house, you will not be happy. And I'm not happy. So I'm against it,
AT&T
totally
can find
against it.
another neighbor who would want a tower on their house, speak up.
Yeah, because I feel that it's next to my house, but it's right on my house. And I don't want it. I'm against it 100%.
Thank you very much.
Mayor Thompson and the other council members, my name is Sarah Sunstein, and I appreciate this opportunity to speak. I agree with the woman from the chamber in that this is a procedural matter. I don't agree with anything else she said, though. There is a conflict of interest. RCC also has contracts with AT&T. Bottom line. And when I said this to the Planning Commission, because this came to light just before their meeting back whenever they approved it, I was told, well, Berkeley hired them. Okay. It's still a conflict of interest. I don't care if Berkeley hired RCC. What's in the city law about conflict of interest? How can we take a report that RCC makes saying this is a fine plan with no specifics? As far as I could tell when I read the report, and I'm not an engineer, Mr. Grishal, because I don't know if I pronounced that right, his questions were not answered. There was some vague talk about that there's not enough coverage, but his questions about how much radiation is being emitted, not answered. And when I look at this map, it doesn't have 1035 San Pablo on there, which the city approved. How much does that coverage go? Are the antennas needed at this site on Solano? That's what I want to know, and I want to know what happens with the shot clock when there's conflict of interest. Doesn't that turn off? And what other points do I have? That's most of it. The coverage maps have not been consistent. This does not include San Pablo, and there's conflict of interest, bottom line, that needs to be addressed. Thank you.
The next three is Laura Lawson, Vaughn Sarlin, Heike Abeck. And if anyone's handing me a speaker card, if you can go behind the speakers at the podium. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Laura Lawson, and I'm a dentist.
Would you please put your mic up so it's closer to your mouth? Thank you.
My height. So I have a business that is on the 1400 block. It's a natural dentistry business. So basically, I'm a dentist, but I'm an integrative dentist, which means that I look at all sides of the coin. I try to do things as safely as possible in our world. I also live on the 800 block of Santa Fe, which is around the corner from where this site is recommended. So clearly, I am very opposed to the idea of having the antennas there, because from what I've read and what I've researched is not clear what the effects on our health this has. And, we know cell phones are not good for us, and we know, microwaves are not good for us, but we still use them. So the question is, how do we make those decisions? And do we make those decisions to affect everyone around us? It doesn't just affect one person, it affects a lot of us. So corporations are going to push these things, and we're going to be forced to make decisions that may not be in our advantage. Sometimes we have some power, sometimes we don't. So the question is, how much power do we have as a small city? Yes, I agree with the idea of coverage. Why don't we wait? Yes, we want cell coverage. Everybody wants cell coverage. I want cell coverage. So let's see what happens. Once we have the San Pablo antenna in and we have the Oaks Theater in, let's see how much coverage is there. Do we need it? Can we wait to make a decision and reassess? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Vaughn Sarlin.
We're seeing AT&T blitz the entire bay. We're seeing 9 towers proposed in Kensington, 34 in Montclair, more than 30 in Berkeley. This is a full-on blitz by the industry. They have a limited amount of time to put these things in before what? Before the public wakes up to the dangers of microwave radiation. This is non-ionizing microwave radiation. It's a fact that if you're a toxicologist, an epidemiologist, or you're you study this at an academic level, not on the internet like someone here before said, you will learn that there are studies all over the world, in Austria, in Germany, in Israel, that show, based on epidemiological toxicological evidence, that there are cancer clusters associated with non-ionizing microwave radiation. Go home and Google that. Non-ionizing microwave radiation cell towers. You'll find YouTube videos. Magda Havis is one in Canada. She'll show you all about this, and she'll show you the readings. She'll go out and she'll sit in front of a cell tower where there are maybe 3 or 4 antennas, and she'll show you the readout. And then she'll tell you what you get out of a Wi-Fi router. And then she'll explain to you what the levels are that are safe. We can't argue about this here today because the FCC in 1996 prohibited us from making health claims. This was under Clinton. They were in bed with the industry. So what can we do now? Not very much, but as citizens, are we going to support the Sunnyside Cafe? Hell yeah. And you know what's going to happen is people are going to start suing the city because their businesses are affected because no one's going to go there anymore. That sounds kind of alarmist, but 12 antennas, that's 26,000 microwatts per square meter times 12.
Please
Do the math,
conclude.
take a look online.
Please conclude. Thank you.
My conclusion is go to magdahavis.com, and you all ought to do the same because really this is a moral and
you need to stop.
Could you say your name? I was interested in what your name was.
John?
With the California Great Tube Association, John.
Heike, or Heike, last name Abeck. And Carol O'Keefe's next.
Would you read 3 people, please?
That's it. That's it.
2 people.
Just 2.
Oh,
Hi, I'm Heike Abeck. I think you know me. I've spoken on this issue several times before. I'm a professional engineer. I don't know if you guys knew that, so I actually understand some of this. I could review the drawings, maybe. I live across the street on the 1035 San Pablo antennas that were put up there or are being put up there. I saw construction workers on the roof recently. I have a few requests, but it's a constant drama for me because we're actually moving because of the cell antennas going up across the street at 1035. So we have bought a new house. And now you're putting cell antennas up a block away from my son's elementary school. So I cannot get away from this issue. But I ask you to do an adequate review. So I don't want any conflict of interest. I don't want any of that in the way of this. So I ask that all the questions that are posed get answered, and that the coverage questions especially get answered. And then I think we can make an educated decision on this. In my case, it might be somewhat biased, but I do think we should have everything answered and not have unanswered questions out there. So at this point, I don't feel like the review has been adequate, and I don't think the chosen consultant, RCC, is the right consultant in this case, because there is a conflict of interest. I think that those are the main points. I think the main issue is the coverage and the unanswered questions that were brought up by the other expert consultant that was raised. So that's what I urge you to do, to get those questions answered, and then we can have maybe further discussions on it.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
I'm sorry, you need to sit down, please.
Carol O'Keefe, Albany resident. I want to second comments already made by Winky Campbell-Notar and Alan Riffer. Please affirm the planning and zoning action tonight. I feel that a lot of the points that have been raised, concerns about completeness of reports or possible conflicts of interest without any facts whatsoever to suggest that that happened, are essentially irrelevant in light of information that was in the staff report for planning and zoning, June 26, which is, I believe I've got it right, attachment W. It's hard to keep track of them when there's 22 attachments. But the pages 10 and 11 talked about the fact that in case law in California, local courts have essentially accepted what the wireless providers have identified as coverage gaps. And I have to believe the same would happen here. So I think pretty much all the rest of this is irrelevant. And you have no choice but to go ahead and affirm P&Z's decision. I attended the P&Z meeting. I thought they did a really fine job of listening and working through all of the issues. And I think Albany really needs to recognize that it doesn't have an unlimited number of staff. As a matter of fact, when you recently did strategic planning, the staff said what we need are more staff. Not staff being given things to do that are repeats of what they've already done, and frankly, a waste of time. And I'm very, very sorry that this review tonight has essentially created legal exposure for the city. There's a lot better things we could be doing with taxpayer money. So please affirm this review and devote any extra time people have to modifying our ordinance so we're not in this situation over and over again. Thank you.
Thank you.
David Sanger, Ed Fields. Anyone else?
Mayor and council members, I have an iPhone. The person who was from the anti-cell phone crowd also had an iPhone. I don't suppose he really wants it to work, but in any case, I did notice him holding it. Also, I would remind you that Solano Stroll is coming up next week, and last year I took my phone and I walked from one end of Solano to the other. I couldn't make a single call. I couldn't get connection from one end to the other. Granted, there are a lot of people there. There's also no facilities. This appeal is a farce. This letter from Arrow is just riddled with falsehoods designed to mislead and confuse you. First of all, a conflict of interest. This is really a spurious notion. Make no mistake, Nan Wishner is basically accusing the consultant of dishonesty. Basically, a conflict of interest is basically saying that they whitewashed their report, trying to please AT&T, a carrier that they once built a tower for. That's a reputable engineering company, hundreds of employees, and Nan has no evidence of malfeasance whatsoever, but is willing to sully their name. Arrow asked for a new policy to avoid conflicts of interest. That's a total red herring. You could say exactly the same thing about Gruchaka, who was a site manager for an AT&T tower on Mount St. Helena. He's trying to build a business challenging carriers like Walnut Creek and in Pleasanton. Well, if he does a proposal, maybe he would slant it a certain way so he can get more business. I wouldn't say that because it's absolutely irrelevant. It just makes no sense. But it isn't RCC and conflict of interest. What Arrow really wants you to believe, the whole premise of their argument against this facility is they think that AT&T is lying to you. They think that AT&T has hunky-dory great service in this area, but they still want to spend all this money building a new facility. And not only that, they've rounded up all these dissatisfied customers who really have good service to complain to you about, well, the kid doesn't really work. So if you live in Lieberland, all you see is conspiracies, and you see big bad corporations who try to take your money. If you live in Albany, you see people everywhere trying to use their phones for basic functional services. So one last thing.
Please conclude.
It cost $53,000 last time and $32,000 the time before. We could spend that money much better in Albany.
Thank you.
Good evening, Ed Fields, Albany resident. Yes, AT&T is probably lying. They use a software program to generate coverage maps. The information that they put in, which is proprietary, determines the maps that they get out. I'm standing in the back of the room. There are 9 streets on Solano Avenue between these two cell tower sites. That's about 1,800 feet, because the streets are 200 feet wide usually in that direction. So that means that a cell tower covers about 900 feet. So that means every other carrier that serves Albany, Verizon, T-Mobile, Sprint, you name it, Metro PCS, will probably, in order to have no coverage gaps, should be here asking to have a cell tower about every 900 feet. And remember, there's another one for AT&T at the foot of Marin, Dartmouth on San Pablo Avenue, 1035 San Pablo Avenue. So if you believe that there's a coverage gap with a cell site 900 feet away in this direction and so many feet away in the other direction, that's because AT&T says there is one. And that was the subject of which the city's consultant asked questions about coverage gaps, okay? And yes, RCC, what do they do for a living? RCC prepares reports for municipalities, well, for cell tower companies to present to municipalities saying that it's all hunky-dory. I mean, that's what Hammond Edison does for RF. They take the numbers that AT&T gives them, plug them into a program, and they spit out the numbers that AT&T knew they were going to get. That's for RF levels. We're not talking so much about questioning those here, though they are pretty substantial. So that's all I'm saying. Where are all the other carriers in Albany saying, we have a coverage gap because we don't have an antenna every 1,800 feet in Albany? Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak to this issue?
Good evening. My name is Tom McIver, representing ATT. My company is On Air LLC. I think the process of allowing everyone to have their voice heard is important to a functional system. I also realize that nothing I say is going to assuage or make people believe. They're going to believe what they do believe. But here's what I want to leave you with. In April, we went in front of the P&Z. We followed the guidelines and the design criterion as established by your wireless code in 2005. Every single finding of our project meets that ordinance. We went in front of the P&Z in April and, frankly, got taken to the woodshed on the design. We incorporated their information and their feedback, came back to them, and received a 4-0 vote. I believe that they were looking at what we have to work with as applicant. The other elements that are brought up by the public, I totally respect what the people are saying. What I'm looking at is what we did for the application, what we meet in the criterion that you've established in your code, what the P&Z approved, what staff has encouraged us to do to make the project better, and we have met every single one of those burdens. Relative to RCC, they're an industry professional that, conflicts, opinions aside, have been in this business since I have, which is a long time. They are professional engineers, and they backed what we provided. I would request respectfully, now that we have given everyone a voice on this, I would request the council to affirm in option number 1 what P&Z approved in June. And I'll answer any questions if you have them, if I'm capable.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak to this issue? Seeing no one, public hearing is closed, and we will bring the matter back to the City Council.
Thank you all for sharing. I'm the one who brought this back, and it was important to me after hearing constituents that they have another chance to be heard. There were, sounded like, and seemed to be conflicts of interest, seemed to be a rubber stamp report. It seemed that we had questions by our consultant that were not answered. Various coverage maps that seemed to be having discrepancies. So it was really important to me to have people speak to this and have an opportunity. So I'm sorry that AT&T has been rather difficult for the city. I know that we're not a favorite customer of theirs. But I think it was really important to hear some of the items that there were possible policy issues, transparency issues, and some of the other things that people have brought up of why that they're distrustful of this site and distrustful of AT&T. So that's why it was important to me. I'm happy to hear people, and I still have some questions about whether this is really the right thing, but I know that given that the city has, done its part in a way that we are under the gun, it's going to be very difficult, I would say, to go against, what they had proposed. But I still don't agree with what what the planning and zoning passed. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak?
I concur with what Marge said, and I also have concerns about conflict of interest.
Okay, anyone else?
Okay, I can fill in a little bit more here. A lot of thoughts. I was on planning and zoning, as many of you know, and we dealt with their application on San Pablo while I was on the commission. And this stuff is really complicated and on engineering and RAF levels. And I think I said it while I was on the commission then. In some ways, this is almost should be in the realm of engineers. Part of the problem is all the engineers are mostly working for cell companies. So it's very difficult to get to a point that's going to make everybody happy on that. I think the Planning and Zoning Commission did a reasonable job with this application. They were hard on them on the design review, and I think they got the design review pretty spot on in terms of changing it from 2 little towers to 1 tower. I think they did well with that. There were things that I found discomforting. AT&T's refusal to work with the city's initial pick of an engineer. It's been explained to me why this might be the case, and I understand the non-disclosure agreement, but in any case, it doesn't breed a lot of comfort for that part of the city that's uncomfortable with it, and that's very unfortunate. Also, I also understand why they would file for the shot clock thing, but again, it just sort of rankles a lot of people in this town, and again, that's unfortunate. I'm fairly neutral on whether RCC was the improper engineer to do this. They are a professional engineering company. There's not a lot of alternatives as far as I can see. So that's something to perhaps think about later on as we're reviewing our law. The question about whether this fills a significant gap, again, this starts getting into a realm of engineering that I'm not particularly comfortable with talking about. But I think when you're talking about, well, one carrier does it with 1 tower and AT&T wants to have 5 towers, whatever, I think it's a bit of apples and oranges going on here. I said during the campaign last fall that what I believe is coming down the line are these DAS systems, which are small, little almost like repeating towers that could be placed every number of blocks. They'll be able to do better coverage. They'll be able to supply other things. And given the amount that we're now depending on our smartphones, they probably aren't going to be the wave of the future. My suspicion is that what AT&T is doing is a bit of preparing for this kind of thing. The health concerns, again, as you know, the bottom line, this is a bit out of our purview. We can't really talk about health concerns. Nobody in the room or nobody up here can assure you that there'll never be a problem. We don't know. But on the other hand, the information, to my mind, at this point is pretty thin that there are problems down the line. If you're having to go to YouTube to get your significant facts, you can prove anything on YouTube, as far as I can see. So, you know, we're balancing this concern about health versus the demand for the goods and services that these cell towers are providing. And right now, I'd say the demand is outpacing the concerns for most of the citizens. I think the value of this review is that we are in process of looking at our cell tower ordinances. And I would hope the Planning and Zoning Commission can kind of take away some of the concerns expressed here, but both by people in the audience and people on the dais. ways that we could better kind of orient our cell tower ordinances in the future. I think there are potential significant gaps if you're talking about, well, you're not only going to get your cell phone to work on it, you're also going to get your internet or your cable TV or any of the other things which are probably coming down the line from cell towers. So our current cell ordinance doesn't really speak to that, and I don't think can speak to that, and that's one of the reasons we're going to have to be looking at that again. Well, that's essentially what I have to say. But I could keep talking on this, but please.
Okay. Well, I essentially agree with Councilmember Moss. I did not appreciate AT&T's stance on the non-disclosure. We do have an expert. As long as he signs it, I think AT&T, that was an arbitrary decision. Having said that, I do think that AT&T did take into consideration the elements of our ordinance, and that's what the Planning and Zoning Commission saw. And so that's where I stand on this. The chair will entertain a motion regarding this matter.
I move that we affirm the Planning and Zoning's unanimous decision on the application at 1495 Solano Ave.
With or without modification?
Without modification.
Without modification. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
It has been moved by Councilmember Barnes and seconded by Councilmember Moss that we affirm the decision of the Planning and Zoning Commission without modification. Is there any further discussion? Will you please poll the council?
Councilmember Atkinson?
No.
Councilmember Barnes?
Yes.
Councilmember Moss?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Weil?
No.
Mayor Thompson?
Aye, and the motion carries. We will have a 2-minute recess so people can rearrange themselves.
No, thank you.
Nothing else to say?
Well,
Oh, dear. I think it's time to call a meeting to order.
As a reminder, if anyone would like to speak on any of the agenda item to follow, please fill out the speaker card. They're in the back of the room, one per item, please.
Would somebody please shut the door?
Please fill out a speaker card. They're in the back of the room if you would wish to address the council and speak on an item. One card per item, please. And if you are handing them to me while a speaker's speaking, out of respect to the speaker, if you could go around the back of them and hand them to me. Thank you.
Okay, the meeting will come to order. Next item, please. Oh, where'd he go?
7.2, resolution number 2013-39 to adopt a revised master fee schedule. Staff recommendation that the council approve resolution number 2013-39, a resolution of the Albany City Council establishing and amending the City of Albany master fee schedule for various permits, services, and fines effective September 4th, 2013.
Staff, please.
Yes, Mayor and members of the City Council, this is part of an annual process to update fees, and periodically the city does incremental adjustments to these fees in order to assure that it's recovering costs and keeping city services fiscally sustainable. The process used was adopted by the City Council in 2002, and it provides for an annual increment. Part of the factors are the cost of living. Oh, I'm sorry. Part of it are the cost of living adjustment. Other factors considered are staff evaluates the staff time required, other costs of providing the services. In some cases with specialized fees such as building permits, there is a link to building valuation data on the cost of construction indexes. Some fees are actually established in your municipal code and they don't automatically adjust. And then the maximum adjustment that would have been made to any of the fees is based on CPI, which for the period used for this study was 2.7%. A draft of the master fee schedule was posted on the city's website on August 23rd, and staff would be recommending that you conduct the public hearing and adopt the proposed resolution. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Does anybody on council have a question?
A couple brief ones. We're raising these by the Consumer Price Index. Do we periodically look at fees in surrounding municipalities to see how we're doing, and how are we doing compared to, say, Berkeley or El Cerrito?
I can't speak specifically to Albany and whether or not that's done. My understanding is the annual adjustment has been applied for several years, however, and when looking at the fees, you have to make sure that you're only recovering the cost of services. So sometimes it's a little faulty to rely on what the agency next door is recovering or not recovering, and they may have policy reasons why they're either have set their fees the way they have.
Okay, so if a business were to open on Solano Avenue and there's some difference between the top of Solano versus the Albany side of Solano, we don't try to look at that when we're giving out fees?
No, the staff evaluates what their costs are and makes a decision whether or not to apply the automatic adjustment or not.
And I take it from what you said that something like the tobacco retailer license fee is set by municipal code, not, to change it would be a whole different process too.
Right, you didn't need to amend the code and change that fee. So that's one that we include in the master fee schedule so that all of them are all together, but it isn't one that's adjusting each year.
Any other question?
I have a brief one. We got a letter today, I believe it was from an Albany resident who owns a duplex that has only one sewer lateral. And the concern was that, and maybe Jeff or Ann can help me on this, was that she's paying for two sewer lines, even though she only has one lateral. And I was wondering if there's some background on that.
And I think the quick initial answer is they should be in contact with Ray and I to evaluate whether that particular fee is being calculated properly, because there may be a unique situation.
And Public Works Director and City Engineer, we did receive a similar letters, and we are looking into this issue. One of the things that I can report right now is because it's a duplex, and duplex we consider as two separate residents, so that's why we have two separate charges. But we are looking into the issue right now.
Okay, thank you.
It seems to me that that's a letter that we had a couple years ago also, which I think it had the similar answer, but I like the idea of looking at it to see whether you can either help the homeowner or there might be some exemption. So I appreciate you doing that.
Definitely, we will do that. Thank you.
Any other questions from council? Okay. Then I will open the public hearing. Do we have any cards?
No.
Is there anyone who would like to speak to this issue?
Hi, Catherine Sutton from Albany and a block captain. And I have to say that 174, no, wait a minute. I forget what the amount is, but it's $180-something for a block to have a block party is very counterproductive. We want blocks to get together. We want people on blocks to get to know each other. You charge nearly $200. Actually, it's over $200 once you add everything together. It's too much. That's my opinion.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak to this issue? Seeing no one, close the public hearing and bring it back to council.
I move that the council approve resolution number 2013-39-A, resolution of the Albany City Council establishing and amending the City of Albany master fee schedule for various permits, services, and fines effective September 4th, 2013.
I'll second.
It has been moved by Vice Mayor Weil, seconded by Councilmember Atkinson, that we approve resolution number 2013-39 to adopt a revised master fee schedule and to approve the resolution of the Albany City Council establishing and amending the City of Albany master fee schedule for various permits, services, and fines effective September 4, 2013. Is there any further discussion? Will you please poll the council?
Councilmember Atkinson?
Aye.
Councilmember Barnes?
Aye.
Councilmember Moss?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Weil?
Yes.
Mayor Thompson?
Aye, and the motion carries. Next item, please.
8-1, discussion and possible action regarding enforcement of the no camping ordinance at the Albany Bulb. Staff recommendation that the council receive public input, discuss enforcement of the no camping ordinance on the Bulb, and either reaffirm the direction provided at May 6, 2013 council meeting or provide other direction to staff as deemed appropriate. Please submit a speaker card if you'd like to, if you haven't already.
Staff, please.
Madam Mayor and Council, Okay, thank you. The purpose of this agenda item is to provide additional opportunity for the public to provide council with input regarding the enforcement of the city's no camping ordinance, as well as to address concern expressed by a member of the public regarding full compliance with the Brown Act. I would like to draw your attention to a couple of other things in the staff report. The first is that the enforcement of the no camping ordinance at the bulb is one that also includes a couple of other things. You'll notice in the ordinance 8-4.3 that included in the no camping is also the no storage of personal property, as well as no construction of either temporary or permanent construction at the bulb. And those two would be enforced at the bulb in addition to the no camping. All of that is included in 8-4.3. I'd also like to let you know that since your direction on May 6th, the staff members, senior staff members, have been meeting on a regular basis to establish administrative procedures for handling the proper storage of personal items for those that are moving into transition into housing, as well as any kind of cleanup efforts. So we have been meeting on, we've been taking a look at what other cities have been doing, and we'll be handling that administratively to make sure that cleanup and the storage of personal property are handled according to the California law, as well as what is proper for taking care of other people's belongings. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Are there any questions from members of the council? Okay. You have a question?
Dogs.
I met with the Berkeley shelter and have trying to gain some information on how we might help those that have dogs as they move into transition housing. And although the Berkeley shelter had some great ideas for how they might be able to work directly with the landlords, they are not able to house the dogs or shelter the dogs. They have very strict criteria for taking the dogs themselves. Some of the suggestions they had was they would be willing to make sure the dogs are vaccinated and spayed or neutered, as well as they would take them through a temperament test and somehow offer some type of documentation to landlords that might help them. They're also willing to fundraise for any kind of supplies that the animals might need, including a crate that maybe some apartment owners might be willing to take on the dog if the animal might be crated when the person wasn't home. So there are ways that they were trying to help us do that. But at this time, those are the contacts that staff has made.
Other questions? The council is aware that people are very concerned about this issue, and we are too. As I said at the beginning of the meeting, this is a public meeting of the council. I expect civil discourse and respect. You're invited to put in a card to speak. You'll be allotted 2 minutes, and the clerk will call 3 people at a time. So we hope that this will work well for you as well as for the council. Also, please be sure you are addressing the council. This is a public meeting of the council. Thank you.
As I call them, if you can, as I call you guys, if you can line 3 at a time by the podium. Robert Chasty, Robert Lieber, Lisa Kleinbach.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Robert Chasty, President of Citizens for East Shore Parks. We were pleased with the action that the city took on May 6th, and we believe that this is a recall of those same points, and we'd urge the council to take the same action. Camping, building structures, dwelling out there, living without plumbing, all of those things that are happening out on the bulb violate approximately 14 laws that we deal with. And it also breaks faith with the hundreds of thousands of people that have worked to create the East Shore State Park by allowing certain people to privatize. If you separate out the issue of homelessness, which I think needs to be done, from the issue of the park, you'll see that there's an important function for a city to protect its parks and to make its parks happen. So the city of Albany was the first city in all of the cities to step forward and start creating the East Shore State Park. In 1985, the city actually entered into a 66-year lease with the State Parks Department to create the first leg of the East Shore State Park. And since then, the march has been steady to reclaim all of this shorefront land for the entirety of the public. I would encourage you to go ahead and take the steps appropriate to see that the camping is stopped. And I'm pleased to see that as a follow-up item, the city is addressing the issue of those people who are truly homeless and need help. And with those people, I think that the thrust should be how to reintegrate them into society and help them get housing, get health care, get mental health care, get substance abuse issues addressed if that's an issue, and help them with the general reintegration that they need with society. So I think we can have a heart and also have a park. Thank you. I'd like to give you some remarks and pass them to the council. Thanks.
Thank you.
Council, Mayor, Robert Lieber again. I'm very excited to see us moving forward with the McLaughlin State Park and integrating the bulb into that park so that we all can use it. This council has been very concerned and very engaged for more than 10 years now with the issues of homelessness in Albany and the bulb. But I think you're taking the right move for the majority of people to return this to a park situation and create a situation where the regional park district and the state park district will take ownership of this land and stewardship of this land for the future generations that follow us. So I encourage you to stay the course and make this the great park that it was meant to be. Thank you.
Thank you.
Lisa Kleinbub, Albany resident. I'm urging you to reconsider the plan to remove people from the bulb in October of this year. And I want to say that the issues of environmental justice and social justice are really deeply entwined. A concern for the environment can't be pursued with disregard for the human beings who are a vital part of this planet, and many of them live on the bulb. We are a community that has not met our responsibility to have adequate affordable housing, our responsibility to at least have an up-to-date housing element as part of our general plan. We actually can't access funding for some projects to actually help the environment in our overall Bay Area because we lack this housing element. I think the issue of the bulb isn't a simple one. I was actually saddened when I was here in May, when people spoke of evicting people from the bulb in 30 days. I felt that that betrayed a lack of any understanding of the true struggles and complexities of being a low-income person residing in the Bay Area. Some of these people are unhoused, some of them don't have access to income, and even if they were to apply for SSI right now, it would take maybe a year or 2 years to actually get access to funding to pay rent. Many of those individuals also have disabilities. Many of our fellow citizens who are housed in Albany have similar concerns and issues. I think we should be aware of that. People who live on the bulb are no different from me, they are no different from you or our family members. We are all human beings, and we deserve to be treated with dignity. I think we need to engage to find solutions for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you. Please, folks, this is a public meeting of the City Council.
Next three, Nikki Spilling, Doris Sloan, Ed Bennett.
I would like to commend the council and the City of Albany for the efforts that you have been making to help the homeless and to provide them with appropriate housing and assistance. I do sympathize very much with the homeless, and I think that there is definitely a need for programs for that group of people in the United States and in various cities and counties in the state of California. However, I also was involved at the beginning of the development of the East Shore State Park, now the McLaughlin East Shore State Park. It's been over 30 years. It's taken all that time. We had to deal with the railroad, a lot of interest in developing offices, hotels, other large buildings, developments along the shoreline. And we continued to push back to reach the point of actually providing a state park with access to all the people in the Bay Area, for them to have a place to recreate, to walk, to enjoy the views of the bay. And this was our purpose, and this was the purpose in which the state park was established. So as much as I sympathize with the people who have settled down on the bulb, I feel that their needs should be met, but not in a public park area that was established for everyone to enjoy, but that their needs should be met by other methods in more regular housing that would be available and should be made available to them. Thank you.
Thank you.
Excuse me. Doris Sloan, Citizens for East Shore State Parks. I, too, have great sympathy for those who have taken up residence in the bulb, and commend your efforts to find transitional housing and a place for them. I, too, have been working for several decades for the East Shore State Park for all of us in the Bay Area to enjoy. And I very much look forward to the day when the Albany bulb is part of the park for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Ed Bennett. I've been involved in what is now known as the McLaughlin State Park for over 25 years. I don't know how much longer I can wait to see the bulb incorporated into the park as was originally planned. In a way, your item 8.1 and 8.2 are connected, and I suppose the answer to 8.2 is what has been accomplished under the present several months that the present group is working with the people who out there are homeless. I don't know whether if you give them another 3 months, any more will be accomplished or what. But I think you need a real, pardon? In terms of getting people out there in homes. So I think you certainly need to move fast and keep moving. If you keep stalling, it'll go on into the next century, the next year, or whatever. So keep the pressure on to get a resolution of this, provide adequate services for those that need it, and get the problem solved. So keep working on it, and I hope that I don't have to come down here again to urge you to keep going. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Next three is Joseph Leisner, excuse me if I mispronounce your name, Karen White, Ruth Barrett.
Evening, my name is Joe Listener. I'm a resident of Oakland, right on the Oakland-Emeryville border. I was a CASA worker, court-appointed special advocate for a moderately retarded gay boy for 11 years. When I first got him, we took a walk on the bulb, and he picked up a coffee cup and said, "This is my mother's coffee cup." And it was true. We showed it to her. She had been living there, and she was thrown out in '99. I can tell you, the eviction in '99 was tantamount to, the most inhumane suffering that you could inflict on people. Her trailer was burnt out. She was hit over the head with clubs. I mean, she has problems, but she was safe. She felt she was safe at the bulb. And that's what's going on now. There are people that have found, refuge from all kinds of things, and they're living in conjunction. I mean, everybody that says they want to use the bulb, I don't know anybody that doesn't go to the bulb because there are people living in tents in the bushes. And it's a great, common usage of a public area. OSHA has done great art. All kinds of wonderful things are going on. If you don't have serious homes for these people or serious services, you're going to do the same thing to them what was done to Charles's mother in 1999. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next person, please.
Karen White. Okay, Root Barrett.
Good evening.
Good evening.
To me, the central question, the reason that I've gotten involved with Share the Bulb is what would it do to me if my home were taken away? I understand the needs of recreationalists, but to evict someone from their home, and not just from a structure, but from a community, a place where people are supporting each other and feel safe. This is a place where people who were harassed elsewhere in the Bay Area have been able to find relative peace, relative safety, where they've been able to live in a balance with their ecosystems. We're talking about tearing apart the greenest neighborhood in the Bay Area to put a state park there instead. It would make a lot more sense to tear down my home. My home takes up more space. My home is a lot less carbon neutral. I am way less integrated with my environment. Thankfully, I'm not about to get evicted for that. But that's what we're talking about doing to this community of people who live in the bulb. I know that people feel very passionately about state parks. But we cannot set some people aside because they're taking up space in land with a nice view because they were kicked out of elsewhere, and treat them differently than we would treat other residents of Albany or the Bay Area. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor, I would really appreciate if people would stop clapping, and if that can't happen, I'd like to close the meeting and have people be outside so we can continue.
Next three, Gigi Winter, J. Michael Reagan, Ruth, last name start with a G.
Hello, I am Gigi Winter. I'm from Oakland. And this is not business as usual anymore. Millions have lost their home, including myself. People are pretending everything's okay. People are losing their homes every day. And when they go out to rent, you ought to try it and see what the rents are like now for what you can get. It's really, really hard. I'm lucky I have Social Security, I have a couple pensions. What about the people that don't? They have a village going on out there. I go out to the bulb myself just to look around, and whenever people come to visit me from out of town, I take them there because it's fun. It's beautiful. There's art. People are good. People are always friendly. It's a little community. I don't see why people aren't just allowed in this day and age where things are the way they are in this area. Should they go sleep outside stores and things like that, break up their community? You see that happening around. Is that what you want for these people too? You know, it's not business as usual anymore. Big things have to be done before we can stop the homelessness that is just huge in this country. In the Bay Area, it's just terrible. So let them have a peaceful community. I feel like the 1% is not going to be happy until everything's private and people are off all the land. And then, you know, we haven't got the hospitalization we need either, so a lot of them will just die, especially seniors. And I don't think the 1% really cares, and I really feel bad that a lot of, I mean, I don't know all of you that well, but I know in Oakland, lots of people will not.
Please conclude.
They are for the 1% and not for the masses. So you gotta be for the people. Let them have their home.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening.
J. Michael Reagan, no relation. We'll make that clear. I've been a director emeritus for homeless shelters for 25 years. I'm a commissioner for the City of Berkeley's Human Welfare Commission. I'm on the board of directors for the People's Park Advisory Board. I commend you when you take the Pledge of Allegiance here at your board meeting or at your council meetings, but you end with life and liberty and justice for all. I don't see any justice here at all for these people. You're not doing, or you're not taking your share of the responsibility in the city of Albany when Richmond, Berkeley, San Francisco, Oakland take that responsibility. I heard people speak that 10 years this situation has evolved up to this point in time. You haven't done anything in 10 years. How do you expect to do anything now in October? Just throw people away with no resources whatsoever. And even though the Berkeley Housing Authority is going to be possibly involved with some outreach services, $30,000 will never cover it, never cover it. My budget in San Francisco alone for 4 years as the administrator was $1.52 million a year. That housed 350 people every night, provided 2 meals every day, job services and other services that were available. So I'm going to ask you to reconsider and give these people a chance and more time and let them try to resolve some things with other agencies if you can find them to do that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ruth? Ruth? Is Ruth in the audience? No. Next three. Megan Salami, Genevieve Wilson, Ron Hodgepon. Excuse me if I mispronounce your name.
Hi, my name is Megan Salome. I'm a student, and I think everything that people have said has been really good so far. I just wanted to bring to your mind something that I read when I was at the Bulb once. It was a sign that someone said, people are happier when they accept diversity as a possible solution. And I think the more that we can share this common space and support people who don't have as much as others do, the better our community will be. Thank you.
Thank you.
Genevieve Wilson. I'm the organizing lead for homelessness and housing with BOCA, an organization based in Berkeley. It's a PICO affiliate. I'm encouraged, I think, by the staff recommendations that I've read. I feel heartened that it seems like there's something more coming. I still feel like I want to ask, oh, city, where is your compassion? Because where we lay our heads and with whom we break our bread, those are deep and important things. I know that you know that. I'm imploring you to think creatively about how to move forward together in conversation. And I just briefly want to share a story. I lived in Bangkok, Thailand for 2 years, from 2004 to 2006. I was a community organizer with a small team. It was an outreach team working among the poor in squatter settlements. One of the communities that we lived in faced a very similar eviction situation. There was a road on either side of the community that needed to be built through. It was a very large road, it was major. And so it was a real need for the broader community. It needed to happen at some point. That was clear to people. But this community had been there for a long, long time, and people had their homes there. And the thing that encouraged me about watching that process was that while it was imperfect, very imperfect, people's lives, human life, was clearly valued above the project itself throughout the conversation. And one of the things that marked that was that there was a city representative who would go regularly to express to the community and to the folks doing the outreach, here's what's happening, and here's how it's happening, and here's when it's happening. And there was a real conversation happening. So while the outcome was not what everybody would have wanted, it was the most human and humane process that I probably could have imagined given the circumstances in their totality. The conversation came to a natural feeling end. So I'm hoping for the same. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor Thompson, Vice Mayor Weil, and esteemed members of the City Council. And thank you for permitting me the opportunity to speak this evening. My name is Ron Hochbaum, and I'm a staff attorney at the Homeless Action Center in Berkeley. Over the last 20 years, the Homeless Action Center has successfully represented 80 Albany Bulb residents in their applications for Social Security disability benefits and Medi-Cal health insurance. We continue to represent a number of the current residents, and I myself represent 4 at this time. I generally avoid public comment, but under my broad interpretation of my ethical responsibilities, I believe in this instance I'm obliged under my duty as a zealous advocate. I'd like to say at the outset that I'm opposed to the enforcement of the no camping ordinance. However, I'd like to meet you where I believe you are at and limit my comments to one constructive request. I beg, I implore you to ensure that the Albany Bulb residents are housed before they are displaced, before enforcement begins. I don't envy the position you are in. From what I've heard, you're balancing a number of competing interests. I know that people who are homeless are among the least represented individuals in our community. Please keep that in mind when deciding how to move forward. Next month, I believe you will find that despite the Berkeley Food and Housing Project's advocacy, none of the Bulb residents will be housed stably. I respectfully request that you act with care and compassion moving forward. Ensure that the residents are stably housed before they're displaced. Don't penalize them for not having a place to go. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next 3 are Marie Castaldi, Chris Douglas, and Eliza Del Piana.
Hi, good evening, members of the council. My name is Mari, and I'm an advocate for homeless and low-income residents of Alameda County and Albany as well. I get asked every day by my clients, some of whom are homeless and others who are in housing and cannot afford it, if I know of resources for available low-income housing. And every day, I have to explain to my clients that every Section 8 waitlist in the county of Alameda is closed. Most shelter beds are full, and that in the city of Albany, there are neither shelters nor any low-income housing available. By enforcing the camping ordinance, you will be removing people from their homes at the Bulb and relegating them to live on the street because there's nowhere for them to go here. Albany's resources would be better spent investing in housing and social services for its residents rather than the criminalization of an entire community. Thanks.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Chris Douglas, and I'm a staff attorney with the East Bay Community Law Center in Berkeley. And, as I sit in this room, I haven't really worked in this community that long, but I've gotten to know a lot of the residents of the Bulb. And as I was sitting listening to the comments, I kept focusing on the seal of the city of Albany, which I find very ironic to the situation at play. On the one hand, you have half of the Bay Bridge, the half that's, I guess, nicer looking. You don't have the half that was condemned, and now there's a new bridge portion to that. And it just seems ironic that you're essentially trying to do the same thing with human beings. You want the city of Albany to be this urban village. I'm not really sure what that means. Yet your own residents who live in this village, you're willing to essentially move out without having any plan for what's going to happen to them. I mean, do you guys understand that these people have been there for a long time? Do you understand that maybe if you're not looking at your computer, Councilmember Barnes, and you're actually paying attention to the comment that people are giving you, that you would have a sense of the magnitude that this is going to affect people? People will literally die. And this is something that's going to be on your conscience and something that will never be revealed in this seal.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Elisa Della Piana. I love the Bulb. I take my kids there. I take out-of-town guests there. It's an absolutely beautiful place. The art, the free library that the homeless residents have set up, it's a totally unique spot, unlike anything else I've ever seen. I love the Bulb, and I've come to love the folks who live there as I've worked with them and gotten to know them. And that's why I'm here to speak tonight, because I feel like I have a personal connection both to the place and the people. And I see that this is, I've also worked with homeless folks in different communities in San Francisco and in the East Bay for over 10 years now, and I see the council's dilemma. But I also think that it's not going to be possible to take the past 14 years of Albany saying it's okay, or actively sending homeless folks from the sidewalks and streets of Albany out to the Bulb, and unravel that in 4 months. I think you'll see that from the Berkeley Food and Housing Project's report. And the reason for that is what a lot of folks have been talking about. There isn't enough housing, and it's going to take time to come up with a plan that's workable. But I want to say that that time is worth taking, that it's worth investing in something that is a reasonable solution that takes into consideration the needs of the folks who are living there. I know that the homeless task force that you convened had some suggestions along those lines. I think there are creative solutions possible. I think if the council takes this quick action and starts enforcing the laws in October, you're going to be faced with a whole new set of problems of folks suffering, of folks being on the sidewalks in Albany, of people risking death, of lawsuits that you haven't maybe heard of yet. And I think it's worth avoiding those consequences. It's worth delaying the formation of a state park a little while to come up with better solutions. And I think that these uses are not inconsistent. I do think there are good solutions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next three, I believe this one is Bob Anderson, Eric Larson, Karina, last name starts with an L.
Council, I just want to say that my experience on the Bulb has been a wonderful experience. To be a part of the community and residents. I just want to say, through my experience, this Bulb that God is sharing a lot of light on is a very wonderful place. And it's telling me that this place is a place where people can be self-sufficient and actually with the God-given gifts inside them, like it can manifest faster. For instance, when the cowboy days, or when the people were more sufficient before they took it away, that the young kids would, you can clearly see what they would be at the age of 12 as being adults. And through my experience, I have learned more than ever, you know what I'm saying, seeing people's transition, like my girl's becoming a painter when she used to just draw hearts, you know, in me. Even being a speaker and communicating on how important it is to live a self-sufficient environment, and how important it is to have camp communities. I think camp communities is something that America took away from us a long time ago, and we're pushed up against this little island, and this is all that we have to offer. Your kids, it's very important that your kids have the opportunity to be able to live this conservative lifestyle on being self-sufficient, so they can pass the streets up and become with godly given gifts what they're supposed to be. It's a wonderful thing, wonderful experiences out on the Bulb.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Eric Larson. Karina L. Karina. Next three, Steve Corey, Kristen Killian Lobos, Julie Winkelstein.
Venerable members of the council and mayor, my name is Steve Curry, and I'm just wondering, does anybody have a property they want to get rid of for $1 that's bothering them, that's like a problem to them or anything? Because I'll take that, and I'll pay the taxes and take care of it and upgrade it, and, a fixer-upper or something like that. Because outside of that, the bulb is the nearest thing that I've got to home. And the people there have fed me when I had no income whatsoever. They fed me. They've taken care of me. They've kept me alive, basically. And also the citizens of Albany, have helped me out a lot. Right now I just got my checks back finally, after fighting for 5-6 years. Okay, and I'm just saying that if you guys, how would you like to wake up with me in your doorway of your business or whatever, it's going like that, and have to step over me to open up? That's what it's going to be if you take the bulb away from us. Bottom line, they took away our rights to homestead. They took away our rights to, gave that to the Bureau of Land Management. Well, why not let Regional Park take the rest of what's left, which is just a little tip of land like that on the end of a peninsula that was basically toxic waste and garbage, And if we're not good enough for the toxic waste and garbage place, where are we supposed to go? And I know I don't want to sleep in the doorway of your business, I really don't, because it's cold, and I caught pneumonia that way 4 times in a row, okay? It's not really a good option. And I'll tell you what, SSI, it's great to have a little bit of money, and that's enough to live on, but it's not enough to live on in someplace.
Thank you so much.
Hello. I now live in Albany. I was born and raised in Berkeley. And as a good daughter of radical parents, I supported what everybody said here tonight. So, but I'm very conflicted. I have a unique perspective. A few years back, my beautiful, precious teenage daughter became severely addicted to methamphetamine, and she spent some time on the bulb. I'm happy to say she's clean and sober and finishing high school at a special charter school run by the Delancey Street in San Francisco, and she's healthy and thriving and home and doing really well. I have a younger daughter who goes to Ocean View. Really, Berkeley and Albany can't provide what I want. I want treatment, I want health care, I want housing, I want everything that everybody in this room needs. And myself, more than anyone, knows for a fact that every person on the bulb and every person in this room is someone's precious child who deserves a right to health and wellness. But that being said, I have to tell you how unsafe my daughter and I feel. My daughter doesn't like to pick up her little sister at Ocean View. My daughter sees people she used with. Let's not kid ourselves, we have meth on the bulb. We do. There's drugs there. And that's just a fact. And she sees people who she used with, and sometimes they look at her and they recognize her and they say, well, I guess you're out of the game. We know what the game means. So it's very emotional for me. I'm not wealthy. My daughter actually just lost her treatment group and her doctor due to healthy families being eliminated by the state of California. So now I'm trying to help her navigate Medi-Cal. It's really, really just, I don't know how I got treatment for my daughter. It was just by sheer will and heart and making 50 million thousand calls to get help. So I don't really take a side, but I want to be safe and I want my daughter to be able to stay clean. Thank you.
Thank you.
Julie Winkelstein, Albany resident.
When I sat down to write notes about what I wanted to say tonight, I had lots of ideas. I thought about suggesting that the hurried eviction of the people living at the bulb was based on ignorance, because one could certainly draw that conclusion. It seems like a little education could help the City Council and some members of our community understand that the people who have been living there for years, on the whole, safely, out of the elements, and with great self-sufficiency, and I may add, with the tacit approval of the city, including twice daily visits by the Albany police, actually have nowhere else to go. There is no housing, much as you may wish that there is. And so when you as a council decided that in a matter of months they needed to leave the only home they have and head back toward public and potentially dangerous homelessness, you are not being compassionate, concerned, or helpful. That had to be ignorance, I told myself. Or I thought about talking about this as a political issue, where in typical fashion the powerful get their way and the disempowered lose out, and where an issue that could be solved amicably has been turned into a war with people who win and people who lose, because that certainly looks like politics to me. And finally, I thought about prejudice and how it's created and how this council seems to embody the very essence of prejudice, making assumptions and acting on them, stereotyping others and using that stereotype to rationalize behavior that is abhorrent, cruel, and counter to a society that is supposed to celebrate diversity. I thought about all of these, and then I decided to simply ask, why couldn't you allow more time for a solution that benefits everyone? Why not work with the people at the bulb to create a way there can be a park without wreaking havoc on lives that in many cases are already fragile? What's your hurry? What's the problem with waiting a little longer? I ask you to ask yourselves, couldn't I wait? Won't the land still be there as it has all these years? Won't you be glad on some deep level inside of you that you have acted on some deep principles that I know you must hold? Thank you.
Thank you.
Next three, Mackenzie Sowers, Nathaniel Miller, Sydney Matson. Mackenzie, Nathaniel Miller, Sydney. Next three, Andrew Franklin, Patricia Moore, and Bob Anderson already spoke. Sorry, I'm having a hard time reading this one. K-E-I. I'm sorry, I can't read.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
My name is Andrew Franklin. I'm an employee at Solano Community Church, and I've been working with Berkeley Food and Housing Project in assisting their housing effort. I've also been working with our friends who live out on the bulb for over 4 years now. Have dinner every week, every Thursday with them, right at the waterfront. And it's because of these ongoing relationships that the city of Albany had approached myself and some other people at Solano Community Church to learn about what is going on at the bulb. This was a few years back. And I have every reason to believe that the city had approached us these years ago in good faith and with a genuine desire to reach compassionate solutions for the community out there. And I commend the efforts of the city. I mean, I genuinely say that. And I believe that until long-term viable solutions are reached for the population there, to continue with the eviction in October would be to undo the hours that the city, Joanne Weil, Jeff Bond, Isabel LeDuc, Penelope Leach, and Ann Cheney, and Beth Pollard, all these hours that these staff members contributed to meeting with myself and some other people to learn. I think that a lot of those good efforts would be undone to act in haste, and I hope that is not the case. I hope that the City of Albany continues the trajectory that I think that you set yourselves on at the beginning, which was a great trajectory to learn and to understand people's stories and to hear what are the issues that we are facing in an attempt to house people. So I would urge you, Mayor and City Council persons, to suspend the enforcement to a later date until we have creative, compassionate, and holistic solutions. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Patricia Moore, and I've been a resident of the Albany Bub for a little over 3 years now. And I'd like to say that in that time, I've come to love Albany. It's a great city. I love it. I commend you for your great city. I've, in my 3 years out at the Bulb, had nothing but positive interactions with the visitors, the dog walkers. It's been a completely positive experience for me. I've never felt unsafe, I've never felt threatened, and I've never even observed a negative interaction between the residents of the Bulb and any of the visitors or the dog walkers. I wasn't out there at the time, but it was either 07 or 08 when the Coscuba hit the Bay Bridge and dumped 53,000 gallons of bunker fuel into the bay. The residents of the community out there came together and started saving birds and cleaning up the shoreline and washing rocks and washing birds. And we share your concern and your desire for the Econoline Peninsula and its inhabitants to thrive. I love that place. I believe that we can coexist. I don't think that the people living out there are contraindication to having a park. I also believe that a world-class park doesn't have to be finely manicured. I believe we already have a world-class park out there. There is new art coming up every day. It's a very positive thing. We've coexisted for 20 years now. I believe that we can continue to coexist. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next three, OSHA, last name starts with an N. Patricia Jones, Bill Dan.
I'm OSHA Newman with Share the Bulb. I'm here to ask you at the very least to extend the deadline for enforcement action until the spring. It will take that long at least to unravel a problem that has taken years to create. A solution will require radical rethinking of alternative, and that's going to take time. To begin enforcing the camping ordinance just as winter is coming piles cruelty on cruelty. The camping ordinance you are set to enforce is so poorly written that essentially no homeless person will be able to live in Albany, and you will have begun a mass eviction of homeless people from the city. Fundamental life-sustaining activities that a person who is homeless cannot help but engaging in, like crawling into a sleeping bag at night when it's cold or finding protection from the rains that are about to come, will become criminal acts. To criminalize activities of a person who cannot help, that a person cannot help but do to survive, is cruel and unusual punishment. It's inhuman, it's unconstitutional. I'm asking you not to go in that direction, at least to give more time. If you go in that direction, as it is, the no housing, enforcement would be a violation of the 8th Amendment, ban on cruel and unusual punishment. The provisions of the camping ordinance forbidding camping, loitering, and lodging are so vague that it violates the 14th Amendment guarantee of due process. Your camping ordinance was explicitly enacted in 1999 as a means to evict from your city people who you deem to be undesirable, and is being used again in violation of the 14th Amendment, guarantee of equal protection. I'm a lawyer, I'm speaking as such now. You have explicitly allowed people to live on the Bulb for many years, and they have relied on your tacit permission, and therefore you cannot suddenly withdraw it. Those are the legal reasons.
Okay. Would you please conclude?
I will conclude. I want you to hear their voices of the people there. They say, we are not trash to be thrown in a dumpster and carted away to a landfill. We're not dogs you can take to the pound, who have not to be adopted and can be killed. We're not plants you can sick your goats on and bulldoze because you prefer some native plants.
You need to conclude.
We're human beings, we're your neighbors, we are your citizens of Albany. We ask you to treat us as such. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and council members. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I promise I won't call you ignorant or dispassionate. My name is Patricia Jones, Executive Director of Citizens for East Shore Park, the organization that has worked for almost 30 years to protect and preserve our shoreline for public parks and open space, as culminated in McLaughlin East Shore State Park, which was established in 2002. SES commends and supports your action to make the bulb a safe parkland for the whole community to use. We thank you for meeting with East Bay Regional Park District and California State Parks to see that Albany Bulb is finally managed as part of McLaughlin East Shore State Park as intended in the park general plan. SES supports your decision to enforce the city's no camping ordinance in October 2013, as is stated in your municipal code 84. We also thank you for funding transitional services for the campers. We hope the campers will use these services because the Albany Bulb is not a healthy place for people to live. It has no running water, sanitation services, no electricity, or any other services required in residential neighborhoods. I've heard speakers tonight talk about dignity for bulb campers. I really don't believe the primitive conditions of the bulb provide that dignity. I've also heard requests of please don't evict without housing. Yet I've also heard from the consultants that the bulb residents have not been willing to work with the housing consultants nor accept housing offered. As guidance in your deliberations tonight, I will leave you with a quote from the park's general plan to remind us of the purpose of this park. The East Shore Park was established to protect the setting's unique natural and scenic resources and to provide the citizens of California with a dramatic new open space resource in one of the state's most urban settings. The conversions of the former landfills of the East Shore into a world-class recreational, natural, and scenic resources for all Californians is a worthy tribute to those who wanted to save the Bay for generations. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the council. Bill Dan, co-chair for the Citizens for the Albany Shoreline, Albany resident. And I support your decision to enforce the city's no camping ordinance. And I understand that it was designed to take effect before the November rain started, so I don't see how a delay is going to help anybody. The sooner they can find housing, the better. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next three, Norman LaForce, Ryan Rising, Catherine Sutton.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the council. My name is Norman LaForce. I've been the Sierra Club leader on parks and open space issues for the Bay chapter for about 30 years. I speak tonight on behalf of the Sierra Club. The Sierra Club fully supports your efforts to complete the East Shore, the McLaughlin East Shore Park with the removal of the illegal camping grounds and privatized residences of illegal campers on what is part of the East Shore State Park, now McLaughlin East Shore State Park. We know this is going to be a difficult process. We know that it's best done without calling people names, without engaging in threats of lawsuits, but it must be done. The bulb is part of the McLaughlin East Shore State Park. In fact, this city was the first to put it into the McLaughlin East Shore State Park back in the 1980s. And it is supposed to be a public facility for everyone to enjoy, everyone to use. One can privatize any kind of public park and public land anywhere. And people living out in illegal communities, illegal camping on what's supposed to be a public park for everyone to enjoy is essentially privatizing a public resource and public benefit. I've heard from many people who are frightened, scared, will not go out to the bulb because it has a privatized community out there of illegal campers, and they just won't do it. They won't take their children there. And that's not what parks are supposed to be. Parks are for everyone, including those who want to come. They just can't stay overnight for years and years and years on what is supposed to be a public park. So please stay the course. It'll be difficult. You're doing the right thing, and make sure you just keep on doing it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, my name is Ryan Rising. I'm a permaculture designer and community organizer in the Bay Area, and I want to encourage you all and everyone here to familiarize yourself with the work of City Repair, an organization in Portland. One of their biggest projects was Dignity Village, in which the city of Portland allotted an acre of land to a group of homeless people, about 60, who then designed and created their own village with input and collaboration with the city of Portland. They all now live in their tiny homes with gardens and other micro-agricultural projects going on and art. It's been noted as one of the most beautiful places in Portland. It has the highest political participation of any population in the city of Portland and the lowest environmental impact. It's been there for over 10 years, and it's basically regarded as a success by both the city and the people of Portland, Oregon. So basically what they did is they allowed these people to facilitate and design and co-organize their own living space, their own village. And through that access to land and through that encouragement and that recognition of them being people, they've been able to create a really healthy living situation and a healthy village in the city of Portland. So yeah, that's Mark Lakeman is one of the main organizers there. City Repair is the name of the organization. And the place that they created in Portland is called Dignity Village. So I just want to encourage everyone to look into that.
Thank you.
Catherine Sutton.
Hi, my name is Catherine Cody.
Ma'am, it's Catherine Sutton's next.
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you.
Put the microphone down so we can hear you.
Hi.
State your name again,
That
please.
works.
Can you state your name again, please?
Catherine Cody, resident of the Bulb. Members of the Albany City Council, we, the undersigned, oppose the expulsion of the community at the Albany Bulb until the city develops a plan to address the human and economic impacts that this eviction will have on the people of Albany, housed and unhoused. Albany does not have a homeless shelter. Berkeley shelters are full. Bulb residents do not have a better option than staying in Albany. It is neither realistic nor fair nor humane to expect to jettison human beings into Berkeley. Albany does not have public housing or designated low-income housing. The Berkeley Food and Housing Project has yet to be able to identify long-term funded housing for a single Bulb resident. If the city pushes people out of the Bulb without alternative housing, it will force our city's homeless people to take refuge on the sidewalks of Albany, just as the rainy season is beginning. We insist that the city invest resources necessary to find adequate and affordable permanent housing or an alternative site for current Bulb residents, not the sidewalks of Albany. We need you to develop a real plan that won't leave all of the people of Albany out in the cold. There are 1,087 signatures here, many from Albany, but also from the Great Barrier Reef in Australia, from Detroit, from France, because this is a world-class park, whether it's your vision of a world-class park or not. I'd like to say that you've done well in attempting to find housing for people, but Berkeley Food and Housing Project is dropping the ball. The people who are out there as representatives sit locked in a van. Where you go, and many of us, like myself, my friend who has COPD, it's impossible for him to get up there and stand outside that van and fill an intake form out. So all we're asking is, please, can we consider a policy change in this, and maybe time, because they need time to get this done. They're not doing the job that you hired them to do. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a nice one.
Good evening again. I'm Catherine Sutton, a Albany resident. And I'd like to reiterate, it's not business as usual anymore. You've heard a lot about laws and illegal camping, and Lawyer Chasty quoted 14 laws that you're apparently breaking. I would like to bring to this conversation the words of Thoreau, and I hope you don't mind me reading him with an English accent. After all, the practical reason why, when the power is once in the hands of the people, a majority are permitted and for a long period continue to rule, it is not because they are most likely to be right, nor because this seems fairest to the minority, but because they are physically the strongest. But a government in which the majority rule in all cases cannot be based on justice, even as men understand it. Can there not be a government in which majorities do not virtually decide right and wrong, but conscience? In which majorities decide only those questions to which the rule of expediency is applicable? Must the citizen ever for a moment, or in the least degree, resign his conscience to the legislator? Why has every man a conscience then? Our woman also, of course. I think that we should be men and women first and subjects afterward. It is not desirable to cultivate a respect for the law so much as for the right. The only obligation which I have a right to assume is to do at any time what I think right. Law has never made man a whit more just, and by means of their respect for it, even the well-disposed are daily made the agents of injustice.
Thank you.
Aaron Ruff, Ilsa Bartlett, Cassandra Bland.
Hi, my name is Aaron Ruff. I'm actually a resident of Oakland, but my church is in Albany, where I originally heard about the people on the bulb. And I am going to address you guys, but I'm going to look at my notes just so I can go fast. I care for these people because I, too, at one point in my life, was left without a home and options. I fortunately was blessed with family and friends, and because of that, my circumstances, which were not all too different from some of these people, were able to be changed. And I know that I had significant help from families and friends, both financially and other support. And I had, as well, an entire year of counseling at a significantly reduced rate that helped me to stabilize. And it took me a year and a half to finally getting married, to be completely financially stable. And this place, the Bulb, is a beautiful place for a park. I've walked it many times, and I could definitely see why everyone has so much passion for making this into a park for everyone to share. But I've been near the current dwelling, the current housing that's there, and away from it. And it's a big space, and I understand that Albany is not a big space, which is probably why there's such a difficulty finding housing. But I do not know whether you on this council are dispassionate or not, but I think that this process of decision-making will be the result of that. And I implore both the council as well as the residents of Albany, including the residents on the Bulb, to figure out a solution where this public space could also be shared as a solution for housing, if a solution another location for housing could not be found. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Ilsa Bartlett. I'm a student of the Dalai Lama My name is Ilsa Bartlett. I'm a student of the Dalai Lama and the 10 men around him. I have robes and I give last rites. About 11 years ago, I was asked to be a mendicant and travel around the country and live on what others gave me. I'm quite a good friend of Jack Kornfeld, who ended up writing a book about his travels. And so I have had, coming from an upper middle class, Tiffany bone china reality, I had the first hand experience in the Berkeley food and housing. I know the people there, but they don't know me about who I am. They only knew me as a homeless person. My daughter, I've raised a family. I've done a lot of good things. She has 9 books. She came back and she said, people don't understand what a wonderful place this is, this part of California. You can look her up. Her name is Serena Bartlett. I've done my part as a middle-class person, as a member of society, in every way, and I say that this conversation was going on just like this 8 years ago when I came to Berkeley as a homeless person. I would like to say that if you cannot care for those who are the least among us, how can you take care of anything? It's not just Jesus who said that. It's Mohammed. It's Zoroaster when he defined good and evil. And certainly, if you want to see me in my robes or you want to go to my website, all you have to do is Google my name. But I think that what you're doing is decidedly wrong. The people should not be eliminated. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Cassandra Blau, and I grew up in Berkeley, and my grandfather was a economy professor there, and when I was around 30, I went through a time period where I ended up kind of bottoming out, and I had depression. I ended up homeless. I stayed at the Albany landfill from 1998, about November to 1999, when we were evicted. They provided looked like a bungalow for us to go into for about a month. We weren't allowed out after 10 p.m. There was no working restroom in the bungalow. It wasn't like what Ann Ritzma told us. We didn't get housing. So I, warned people to beware about that. And I ended up picking myself up. I had 2 sons with my husband, who was also homeless there. They're now 11 and 13. I still have good friends that live at the landfill and reside at the landfill. They do their thing. I do my thing now. I don't feel in danger when I go to the landfill. I take my children to the landfill. We love going to the landfill. I love looking at OSHA's art. There's nothing like it. I post videos about the landfill. I bring people, my friend from Australia, to the landfill. I think it's perfect the way it is. The people that people don't trespass in the campgrounds. I don't go through the campgrounds. I don't know of a lot of the people there, and there's still a lot of space for everybody to enjoy. My kids, we go to the beach. I take my dog to the beach. Say hi to my friends at the landfill. I'm also a payee for mentally ill and disabled people that reside at the landfill, and they are a lot easier for me to give their money to when they're there and not getting arrested up on Telegraph Avenue and Shattuck Avenue. And in terms of the drug problem, it's on Shattuck Avenue. I had a daughter that also had problems, and she was on Shattuck Avenue, surrounded by cops, 1 block from the police station, buying meth. So I don't think we can blame older homeless people for that kind of thing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Paul Curry, Amber Whitson, Andrew Hoffman, and Brian Parker.
Good evening, everybody. I've been involved in this process for quite a while. I was one of the people who started the homeless task force before the city council was involved in it. And I have 2 very definite ideas that are not being answered. One is, why do we not have a situation or a place where the homeless people, and I'm not talking about just the people who live on the bulb, but I'm talking about the people who live around town. Why do we not have a drop-in center? This is a no-brainer. It doesn't cost as much as building a lot of other things. And I'm wondering why. I've been asking for it for a long time, and nobody has ever gotten back to me and said, well, what do you think? How can we do it? Well, we know how we can do it. We find a place, and we fund it, and we do it. And that's my main thing. And the other thing is that when I have heard people complain about the people who live at the bulb, and we're going to move them all out, and we're going to have a park there. No, we're not going to have a park there. We're going to have concrete and rebar there, and it's not going to change one bit. And I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, but I'm a little bit upset about what Councilmember Barnes said, that he thought he could, close the meeting down and throw everybody out. I don't think that's a helpful thing to do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Amber Whitson, Albany Bowl resident.
Many laws that target homeless people living in public spaces interfere with their right to freedom of movement by either keeping them out of certain areas in a city or forcing them to move to other spaces involuntarily. When a city passes a law and then allows for arbitrary enforcement by law enforcement officials, such as Albany passing the camping ordinance and then ordering police to cease enforcement, that law can be determined to be overly vague in violation of the Constitution. Article 12 of the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, or the ICCPR, contains provisions that protect the right to movement. The Human Rights Committee, or the HRC, which oversees the ICCPR, has definitively stated that the right to movement is an important right, one that should only be breached by the least intrusive means necessary to keep public order. Michael Barnes. Article 26 of the ICCPR protects equal protection of the law and prohibits discrimination based on a variety of statuses. The United States participated in the 1996 Second United Nations Conference on Human Settlements and is signatory to the Habitat Agenda, which states that no one should be penalized for their status. Laws that criminalize performing life-sustaining activities in public, such as sleeping and sitting or loitering, target homeless people based on their economic and housing status. Court challenges from around the country have shown that laws and measures that outlaw otherwise innocent behavior may violate homeless persons' constitutional rights. The Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals has found involuntariness to be a key factor when determining whether laws punishing acts that are life-sustaining and necessary violate the Eighth Amendment. The UN Special Rapporteurs on Housing and on Racism and on Human Rights Committee and the Human Rights Committee have urged the United States to reduce the criminalization of homelessness, unlike what Albany is about to do. The international law protects against both intentional discrimination and policies with discriminatory effects. The majority of Albany's homeless population, at least out on the bulb, are not only low income, but they are also disabled. Albany has few, if any, services that low income or no income disabled residents currently living on the bulb or not could avail themselves of in order to achieve traditional housing. I'm almost done. Disabled individuals are disproportionately represented in the homeless population worldwide. Laws and ordinances that criminalize homelessness inherently have a disparate impact on disabled individuals. I'm almost done, I really am. Forced evictions have long been contrary to international human rights agreements, and destruction or sweeps of homeless encampments could be considered contrary to international human rights principles. I am almost done. And a violation of the Covenant against torture. Right. Article 16 of that convention prohibits acts of cruel, inhuman, or degrading treatment or punishment. The cruel and unusual eviction of the otherwise homeless Albany residents from our homes on the Albany Bowl violates.
I am going to have to invoke the Sergeant at Arms if you do not finish.
I just thought I'd let you know.
My name is Brian Parker. I support the decision, the council's continued decision, hopefully, to enforce the camping ordinance on the bulb. You know, it's obviously about balance. The council is taking a lot of things into account and trying to make a balance. But if we don't, you know, the original reason why the campers aren't supposed to be out there is because we have laws. And if we don't follow the laws, we have anarchy. And it's a thin line between anarchy and being a nation of laws. So I'll go with a nation of laws. I don't think it's about the council not caring, the council backing the 1%, nor listening to Walden and trying to figure this out, or, you know, accusations of prejudice against homeless people, because I don't think that's in anybody's heart here. I'm very clear on that. The council's done a lot to bring in a respected social service provider. They've been out there. They're nice people. They're, I think they're street smart people. I think they've been doing the outreach, but as is explained in the next staff report for the next item, I think Amber has organized the bulb residents to resist taking advantage of the opportunity. They're all hanging together, and it's what we come to tonight. It's unclear to me whether 105 days, as was granted by the council in May, or 505 days, or 1,005 days will be enough. I think extending the social services so that they're available at the time when the police go in and ask people to leave is what needs to be done. Maybe there'll be some uptake then. It's all you can do is offer. And if people don't want to take you up on it, that's their perfect right. I think the people in the community have a right to go down there, and under our laws, it's the Albany Waterfront Park. Under the adopted city policies, it's the Albany Waterfront Park. And 50 or 70 people shouldn't be able to take it for themselves and make many people uncomfortable. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, and thank you for your time. My name is Andrew Hoffman. I'm an Albany resident and also senior pastor of Solano Community Church. We've been involved with the homeless on the bulb. Andrew Franklin's our director of city mission. We've given him half of his time to be meeting with and assisting on the bulb in any way possible. So this is something that's dear to our hearts and very important. Seems to me that, and by the way, if we had the resources to provide what was needed, we would do that. But we don't. So I think it's going to take a more of a collective effort. Seems to me we have three options. At least coming in here, I felt like the first option, which was to allow the homeless to live on the bulb indefinitely, was sort of a dead option, although I grant that that's not the case for a number of people who've spoken tonight. It seems that the second option would be to move forward with the eviction in October. And my concern with that is that I think we lose a precious window. And there's a window of time right now where a number of organizations and individuals have come together to work on homelessness in the city of Albany. And there's a kind of a season right now where we could put together a plan that would go forward into years and decades that would say something about who we are as a community and how we respond to homelessness in our community. If we go ahead and evict immediately, I think we're going to lose that window, because right now this issue is coalescing a number of individuals together, and I think we come up with a great plan. And so I would recommend for the third option, which is to delay until we come up with a plan as a community to address homelessness and to do our share, as I think every city should, to support those among us who have that need. I think it'd be wonderful if we could have a long-term plan in place before we would ask people to leave the bulb. And I don't think it's impossible to consider. I think we just need to buck up and do it and meet together and figure out what resources we can pull together and harness a lot of the goodwill that is present right now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next three, Bob Lutis, Rochelle Nason, and Ann Miley.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I had prepared comments lasting approximately 3 minutes, so I would like to submit a copy of those to the clerk. I will do my best to get through them. I won't repeat comments made for or against the issues before you, but I do want to address a legal issue of process. You have been, for the last 3 meetings, of which you've considered issues related to the bulb, dealing with 2 things: incorporating the bulb into the McLaughlin East Shore Park, and you've been dealing with a fundamental change in council policy regarding the removal of residents of the bulb. It's apparent that those 2 issues are inextricably linked. That's amply demonstrated by public and council comment in those meetings. It's evident from the existence of prohibitive park district policies. Third, Councilmember Wiles' motion, as approved by the council at the May 6th meeting, conclusively establishes the linkage, and you may not unring that bell by separately agendizing these 2 issues. But the city is already legally obligated to proceed to incorporate the bulb into the park, right? Well, actually it's not. The city's only binding legal obligation is to perform under the 1985 lease with the state of California. That lease contemplates an entirely different park with a marina and a road, and no one, not the state, not the park district, not the city, wants that project to be enacted or implemented, nor will it ever be. So how are you going to get to where you want to get? You're going to amend that lease, you're going to do a new lease, or you're going to convey the park property to the state. Each one of those actions is a project for purposes of the California Environmental Quality Act, and each one of them is inextricably linked to your current action. Therefore, you must rescind because you have not done the environmental analysis required. I've elaborated a little bit more on that in the comments I submitted. Thank you.
Thank you.
Rochelle?
Good evening, Madam Mayor and members of the council. My name is Rochelle Nason. I'm a resident of Albany, a member of your waterfront committee, also a member of Citizens for East Shore Parks and Albany Dog Owners Group. I involved myself as an activist with regard to this issue because it involved 3 different issues that I feel very passionately about. One being the Albany Waterfront Park, which there's been some lack of recognition of some of the speakers tonight that it is a park. It is a park today, and we all need to respect that status of that land. But I also have a deep interest in the issues around public benefits and people, particularly the disabled and aging people in need, are issues that I have involved myself in throughout my adult life. And finally, because it involves the city of Albany, and I am a lifelong resident, off and on, of this town. I have become, and I had hoped when I began attending the Homeless Task Force meetings that there would be a way to knit together the concerns of the people living on the bulb with the need to respect the parkland and ultimately move towards the future that has been the shared vision of Albany for so many years. I have become convinced that enforcing the anti-camping ordinance is really the only way, given the economics and the culture of the issue. It's the only thing that is going to move people and motivate people to undertake the searches and make the changes in their life, apply for the benefits, get the help that they need. One thing that has impressed me tonight is the infrastructure, the social infrastructure we have around homelessness. When you look at how many people have identified themselves as staff attorneys, as community organizers or employees, I hope that they can help. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Ann Miley. Of Albany. I have been since 1981. Thank you. I forget that. Okay?
Thank you.
And I've never spoken before at a city council meeting. But I am concerned that we're heading forward on this project as a zero-sum game, and I don't think that we have to be caught in that. I think there are much more creative is a word that's been used a lot, but I think there are more integrative ways that we could proceed on this. Clearly, the vision of the park is not what it was when it was first signed on to as a marina with a road running through it. You know, there's been evolution on this vision for some time, and I don't know about the commonly held vision. I like parks. I had kids that I raised here. I think it would be a very useful thing to have a park, but I think there could be people who would be stewards of the park. I think there could be people who have knowledge of the waterfront and of the dangers that are out there in terms of rebar and cement and other things that could be problems for people that are visiting the park, and they could also be guides to get people around the park and to be docents for the art that's out there, as well as having a way in which people could live out there. That problem that we don't have affordable housing is something that we're going to have to address in the very near future, apparently. And there could be ways to look at the bulb for that as well. I would just encourage the council not to set up a battle and to take this role of leadership in this that they can. We need that. Please do.
Thank you.
That's it.
Is there anyone else who has not spoken who would like to address this issue?
Hi, my name is Dan McMullen. I'm a commissioner with the Human Welfare and Community Action Commission in Berkeley, California. Also, 13 years ago now, I think time's going flying by, I lived at the Albany landfill. I'm standing here on an artificial leg right now. At the time, I stood before this city council. It was a whole different bunch of faces. Ann Ritzma was sitting over there at the time. I don't know where she is right now, but I hope she's making up for some of the sins that she committed back then, because it was pretty bad what happened back then. They threw a lot of people, including me. I was on crutches at the time. I didn't have a leg. I was, me and my wife, future wife, Katie, were together out there. It was a place where I got off the streets. It started getting me, my life into a better direction. But what set me back horribly was getting dumped onto the streets again by the city of Albany. I watched a lot of people that were out at the landfill actually died on the streets. There's a lot of people that aren't with us anymore. They passed away on the streets. I went through a lot of pain and suffering through, police harassment and homelessness and being dumped onto a sidewalk with no medical care. I had to sleep in front of the housing authority to actually get indoors. That's what I ended up doing. I don't know how many people could pull that off. Luckily, I was on the list already, so I called the newspaper, and they didn't like that, so they said, okay, we'll get you off the street. And that was the beginning for me, and I started working with Disabled People Outside Project, where I help people that are homeless, and in Berkeley, and I haven't really heard much about what was going on at the landfill, and I work with homeless people all the time. And I just started working on the homeless task force in Berkeley, and we don't really know about what we're going to do with this influx of people you're going to throw into Berkeley. And as a commissioner that goes over the Berkeley's money and gives money to people for homeless all the time, I don't know what we're going to do with all these people you're sending towards us, and I'm going to find out about that soon.
Please conclude.
So maybe we need to work a little longer on this problem before we throw people on the streets again.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who has not spoken on this issue who would like to address the issue? Seeing no one, we'll bring it back to the council.
I'll start.
Okay.
I think the first issue that obviously has to be addressed is this issue of whether or not we can enforce our anti-camping ordinance on the bulb without going through a CEQA process, as Mr. Oudis suggested might be a problem.
Yeah, I think the argument, if I understood it, was that the enforcement of the no camping ordinance is linked to potential future transfer of the land to the state parks, and somehow that requires a CEQA action. The discussions that have been initiated about potentially transferring the park to East Bay Parks or the state park are really at a very early stage, and there's been no commitment in that direction. The city could move forward separately, I think, legally, in terms of enforcing its existing ordinance without pre-committing to the ultimate disposition of the property. So if the council's policy determination is that the no camping ordinance ought to be enforced so that the property can be made available to the general public for use as park and open space, I don't see that as requiring an analysis under CEQA.
Okay, thanks. Continuing along that line, I counted the lawyers here tonight, at least the people I know who are lawyers. There's Ocean Newman, Bob Chasty, Norman LaForce, Bill Dan, Bob Oudis, and Rochelle Nason. I think, forgive me if I've forgotten anyone. I don't know you. And plus some of the folks who announced themselves as being attorneys, one from Oakland who thought I wasn't paying attention to him, but actually I was. So I'm hearing a lot of conflicting opinions between various attorneys. That's no surprise. One thing that bothers me, everyone has their own version of reality, and we sort of, when you're on a council, you have to triangulate that a little bit. There was one of our pastors, I think the last name was Hoffman, pointed out that he thought there was a sort of a bunch of social justice folks coalescing, and there might be a something special happening here, and we need to give that time. And I think that's a good thing. On the other hand, I've heard from various people that, I'll try to say this as diplomatically as I can, someone said it here tonight, that there's kind of a passive-aggressive thing going on in the Bulb where people are refusing social services, and they perceive that somehow in the long run that's in their self-interest. So I'm conflicted about that. I'm not sure where reality lies between those things. But I'm going to try to be lawyerly a little bit here and talk a little bit about negotiation space, okay? I think in the long run, and I'm not sure how long the long run is, there will not be homeless people living on the Bulb. I don't want that as a city council member and a resident of the city of Albany. How long that's going to take, I'm not sure. I would like to see that land eventually become some kind of park and revert to the park district, largely because I think it's a regional facility. I talked to lots of people who are in Kensington and El Cerrito and places like that, and they run their dogs down there. And I think we're a little municipality, and it's beyond our resources to run regional parks. So I would like to see some sort of regional organization with regional facilities taking care of that land. But let's talk about time. Motion Newman suggested maybe we hold off till next spring. We heard from some people they'd like us to stay the course. Norman LaForest, I think, used that word, and start enforcing the anti-camping ordinance next month. So I'm happy with my fellow council members to work out some kind of timeline. That would be great if we could see that everyone on the Bulb is housed in some way, and we don't have to put anyone out on the streets. I'll also agree with Amber that she has complained often that the problem is new people coming onto the Bulb who really aren't sort of real Bulb residents, and the problem is this influx of new people. I think one thing we need to do for sure is to stop that process. Amber complained, for example, that Berkeley police are still sending people to the Bulb. So I agree with her that that process needs to stop. So that would be the first place to deal with the problem. So actually, I'm fairly open-minded. My negotiation space, to use that sort of legalistic term, is reasonably big at this point. I need to hear from other council members what they think, but I want to be real clear that I don't want to see homeless people living on the Bulb forever.
I just want to remind people, because some people were not here in May when I spoke about my own background, that I've had 30 years of working with homeless individuals as a social worker. And then in my 7 years on the city council, I've been involved in doing weekly rounds at the Bulb, and have also helped 4 individuals find housing and obtain various housekeeping items like mattresses for their beds, kitchen supplies. And I was involved in writing a grant with Judy Lieberman with Berkeley Food and Housing Project, so that we could have a case manager work with people at the Bulb, and then that was not granted by the Albany, the Alameda County that was issuing grants. But I do feel that we're moving in the right direction, having Berkeley Food and Housing again work with individuals there, and also that they've been able to obtain grant money for temporary housing for individuals. And I don't think that we get anywhere by name-calling back and forth, and it's really important for us to be allies in this whole process. And I think we need to go ahead with our plan that we talked about in May of having the police issue the citations and work with people at the Bulb, just as we've asked people at Berkeley Food and Housing to work with individuals there.
Very complicated issue. I recognize that. And a lot of different things going in here. So, I'll let the attorneys argue it out over what kind of park we have or whose jurisdiction it's under. I do know that this has always been looked at as park by the city of Albany. It was in our general plan 92, I believe. And although it may not be everybody's idea of what a park is supposed to be like, it has been used as a park. I also get this idea that there's a community down there, and it's a community that supports the residents in ways that, you know, outside of that bulb, they're not going to be able to get to so easily. I think it's important. But there's also a community in town here who, you know, over the last year, as people feel threatened by going down there, as they've had their dogs attacked, you know, just don't want to go down there anymore. They feel like they're losing out on a space that was part of Albany's park system. So, you know, we've got two sort of goods battling each other out. I don't think anybody up here is ignorant or uncompassionate. I think that's, you know, you don't point fingers like that. It is not helpful to call, oh, you're just ignorant so you don't understand me, or you're uncompassionate so you don't know how we feel. You know, that's just not useful. It's just not going to get us anyplace. I do think that Albany is a small place. We're a small community, and we have, you know, in a wonderful world, we would build all the housing we would need for everybody that comes to town. That's not reality. We can't afford it. We can make more effort, I agree, to produce more housing, but, you know, that's not going to help the immediate situation. I think the efforts that we did make in May and put forward is a good first step. I think that, you know, if there's a possibility and some, thinking of the word, if people at the bulb can avail themselves of some of the services that are being offered through Berkeley Food and Housing, there's a chance that they can move on with their life, they can deal with some of their problems, and take that next step. Those steps, you know, are change, and change is always very discomforting to everybody. But it's what I think Albany is able to put forth at this time. I think this idea, which will come up in the next thing on our agenda, of continuing this after October, I think is also important. But what I'm seeing right now is that there's a lot of folks think that, well, you know, either there's some legal issue that's going to keep me down at the bulb, or you know, if we're organized enough and we are loud enough, we can stay at the bulb. You know, I just don't think that's a good way of looking at it. The way to look at it right now is to look and see what these services are, what's being offered, and try to make something out of it. Because in the long run, you know, this is not the place for a homeless encampment. So at this point, I would support that we continue on with our October enforcement of the no camping ordinance.
Oh, I don't know. This is just really tough. I feel very conflicted because I hear all of you in terms of real life. I think for me, unfortunately, for my people that are supporting me, Michael, you struck a chord. I really feel that what Andrew was saying was really important to me. I know that church has worked with the people there for a long time, and I do feel that the goodwill is important. I think that eventually, maybe eventually isn't a good word, but there has to be an end point. I don't think October is an end point. I think that's the start of looking at where we are. I would like to see some sort of compromise where you start this process and you work with the community that are there, but you have to know that there's an end. That may be, well, we want to pay through December. I would be willing to pay for a few more months, but you have to have an end. If there was a community group that could work with what you could do in, let's say, instead of December, a few more months, then I don't see us getting together with East Bay Parks immediately. It sounded like it's on the books, but not, soon. And this is not what I should be saying for what I had expected to say, but I really feel that there needs to be a compromise, even if it's not as much as some people would want and maybe more than other people would want. But I feel like what Pastor Hoffman said is just really, really important for our community. So that's kind of where I am. I'm not really sure how to go forward on that. I feel like this is very difficult. We're not going to solve the problem. We're going to do the best we can. Money has been pulled out from everywhere in all, state, federal, so that we can't really handle everything that we would like to. But I think there must be some way that we could start building some way of having this outreach that Mr. Curry talked about. And I don't know how much money the city has. I don't think we can support everything, but it seems to me we could start somewhere with some kind of small way if we have help from the community. There's just no way that the Berkeley city, we've got a lot of Berkeley people, the Albany community can do it by itself, or that the city can do it by itself. It's a community effort. So I'm kind of in between what you guys are saying and what you're saying. So I'm not sure yet.
Well, first of all, I want to thank you all for the civil discourse and the respect that you paid to every other speaker. That's really, really shows a lot about the community. I appreciate the comments that I've heard. I appreciate where the people from the church who've worked so hard are. My problem is this. I'm afraid that if we continue past October, we'll be whatever date we set, we'll be going through this again. And there just has to be some point at which we say, we're going to offer services because that's what we wanted to do, that's what we started to do, and where we say we have to enforce our ordinance. And irrespective of whether it's part of Albany or whether it's part of some state park, makes no difference, because some people in the community, and not just some, many people in the community have expressed to me their concern about going to the bulb or taking their families to the bulb or taking their own dogs to the bulb. So we have to provide an environment that's safe for everybody and that is a healthy environment. I don't think the environment at the bulb right now is healthy for even the inhabitants. I think we have to work toward these services, and I greatly appreciate the outreach that you folks have made. And obviously, we're concerned enough about it that we're putting the next item on the agenda so that we can continue that dialogue and we can continue that outreach. But I do think we need this endpoint as far as enforcing our ordinance.
I'd like to go ahead with a motion.
The chair will entertain a motion regarding this item. Wait just a minute.
Okay. I'd like to reaffirm the direction provided at our May 6th council meeting requesting the police department to commence enforcement of the no camping ordinance in October.
I'll second that.
It has been moved by Vice Mayor Weil, seconded by Councilmember Moss, that we reaffirm the decision of May 6th in which we have the police enforce camping ordinance beginning in the month of October. Is that correct? Okay. Is there further discussion?
Can I just hear it again, please? Can I hear the motion again, please?
Yes.
I can.
It has.
Do you want me to repeat that? Reaffirm the direction provided at our May 6th council meeting, requesting the police department to commence enforcement of the no camping ordinance in October.
Can we add 2013?
2013.
Okay. All right. So the motion is to reaffirm direction given at the May 6th meeting in which the police would commence enforcement of camping ordinance in October.
2013. What is the last part? 2013.
Oh, 2013, thank you. Okay. Is there further discussion?
I'd like to ask how the process after October, what is the process? I mean, once you start enforcing the camping ordinance, is it a few people, or you start working with different people, or they have to move by a certain time, or do we know what that process is?
That's actually what staff has been meeting on, and how we're looking at what other cities have been doing to be able to enforce it in a way that obviously takes everyone's property into consideration, everyone's housing situation into consideration. So absolutely.
Okay, so you have another month to work on that.
Absolutely.
Further discussion? Will you please poll the council?
Councilmember Atkinson?
No.
Councilmember Barnes?
Yes.
Councilmember Moss?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Weil?
Yes.
Mayor Thompson?
Aye, and the motion carries. We'll take a 5-minute recess.
I wrote it down, but I think it's right. I feel bad for some, like, treating them in high.
Just too hard. This is, I don't know. It just seems like it should be.
Can you keep them in the same? Yes.
That was a tough one.
Thank you.
was heading over to Mike to go, what's going on? What happened? What happened?
Just come up recently, this golden rice controversy. I don't know if you're following, golden rice.
Oh, was it the guy sitting on the ground? Oh, yeah, he was.
Has beta carotene in it because vitamin A deficiencies are very bad in Southeast Asia. But the anti-GMO folks are against it, but a lot of the NGOs are on the ground in the Philippines and Indonesia.
Oh.
They're much in favor of it. And I've been to both those places. I spent a summer in Indonesia and I have Filipino friends and traveled a lot around the Philippines with them. So yeah, I've been to Bangkok. Bangkok is better than Manila. Those cities are so perfect.
Oh, and we have to have a motion. The time is up. We have to have a motion to continue.
To go past.
We have to have a 10:30. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I would be really surprised me. Maybe it's that Buddhist background.
Would somebody please close the doors?
Bart? I'm happy to talk.
All right, the first order of business, the chair will entertain a motion to continue the meeting for half an hour.
So moved.
I second.
You moved it? Did you move it?
I did.
Okay, been moved by Councilmember Barnes, seconded by Vice Mayor Wild, that we continue for half an hour. All those in favor say aye.
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 Motion carries. Next item, please.
8-2, report on homeless outreach and engagement program. Staff recommendation that the City Council, 1, receive information on Albany Project Hope, and 2, adopt resolution number 2013-48, authorizing the city manager to extend the contract agreement with Berkeley Food and Housing Project to continue the homeless outreach and engagement program citywide until the end of the year at a cost not to exceed $30,000.
So members,
Like that.
okay. So a little bit of background. On May 6, 2013, the City Council directed staff to issue a request for proposal for an organization to conduct outreach and engagement services for a period of 3 months to people who are homeless in Albany. A request for proposal was released May 13, and on June 17th, the City Council authorized the city manager to enter into a contract with Berkeley Food and Housing Project for $30,000. A little bit about Berkeley Food and Housing Project, which was founded in 1970, has extensive experience providing services to people who are homeless. Services are provided at different sites throughout Berkeley. They run a men and women's emergency shelter, transitional housing program, 2 rapid housing case management centers, 2 community meal programs, and permanent supportive housing for long-term homeless men and women with mental health issues. They also partner with a number of different organizations that provide services. In their outreach and engagement program called Albany Project Hope, BFHP proposed a very comprehensive approach and included a collaboration with Solano Community Church staff and volunteers who had been providing and still are providing basic supportive services to people on the bulb and have been doing so for several years, as you know. On July 15th, BFHP started to use basically BFHP started to go out on the bulb July 1st, and on July 15th, they started to use one of the city's child care vans that was no longer being used by the program to provide mobile outreach and engagement citywide, including at the bulb. The van, which functions as a mobile office, is equipped with a laptop and printer and allows the outreach team to go out to the bulb and make contact with people in the encampment and drive people to BFHP's facilities in Berkeley or other services as needed. BFHB, in collaboration with Solano Community Church, hosted a community kickoff meeting on Thursday, July 25th, at the Albany Community Center. And the purpose of that meeting was to provide information on Project Hope and solicit assistance from community members. It is widely recognized that homelessness is a complex social issue that is not due to just a lack of shelter. It also involves a variety of unmet needs and underlying economics, physical, and social challenges. Many people who are homeless are eager to regain the stability of permanent housing, but for others who have a long history of homelessness, engagement can be a challenge. The first report submitted by BFHB for activities in July showed that during the first 2 weeks of the program, 32 people filled out a short assessment, which was used to evaluate factors that affect next steps in housing procedures and other needs. Of the 32 people assessed, 22 followed up with a more thorough intake. 3 households filled out the Emergency Solutions Grant application, a grant that is used by BFHB to provide housing subsidies. A total of 45 people were served with or without the assessment. Most were from the bulb, except for a household of 2. BFHB provided 89 referrals to services, and the most sought-after service has been getting ID cards, which is the first step to accessing most services, including housing. As of the writing of this report, no one has been housed. Let's see. As far as next step, since the enforcement of the no camping ordinance has been reaffirmed, BFHB's plan will be to administer a 30-day plan to those still on the bulb willing to work with BFHB. The 30-day plan outlines different housing options available given the timeline. So there's going to be a focus due to the new timeline. Staff is recommending that an extension of the BFHB contract, which currently ends September 18, and the outreach effort would be scaled according to the changing need until the end of the year, with the hope that people who choose to be housed get the assistance needed. The extension of the contract would be for continued assistance to those who are in the process of being housed. And it is worth noting that while the city is making resources available to people who are homeless in Albany, the decision to seek assistance and attempt to move from a state of homelessness into housing is a matter of personal choice. The financial impact to date is basically at the June meeting, you authorized the city manager to enter into a contract with BFHB in the amount of $30,000 using council discretionary funding. The cost to continue the homeless outreach and engagement program citywide from September 19th through the end of the year will be up to $30,000 for a total of $60,000. Funding for additional services include $22,168 in CDBG funds available for the homeless outreach and engagement program and $7,832 of general fund, creating a total of $30,000 available for the extension of the contract. I would also like to introduce Lara Tenenbaum. She's the Director of Client Services at BFHB, and she is also here available tonight to provide you some more up-to-date information about the outreach and answer questions. And I'm also available for questions.
Are there questions from the council?
Yeah, actually, I just thought of one. Do you want to go first?
No, go, no.
Okay. There was a statement earlier that staff are sitting in their trailer and not meeting with people. Can you clarify?
Sure. We have staff out there 2 days a week, Tuesdays and Thursdays. And I believe that initially in the first few weeks of the project, they were walking around more. I think now people know that they're there on Tuesdays and Thursdays, so they do a quick walk when they first get there to alert people that they're there and offer snacks. And then their home base is the van. The computer and the housing resources are there, but the doors are certainly open, and people are coming to the van to talk. And people want more privacy, they can step aside, or they might close the doors of the van for privacy if they're meeting with somebody.
And you're keeping track of the number of contacts each day?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
follow up on that. I had the same feeling. And do they go out, though somebody can stay in the van and still, it seems to me that the personal contact is just really, really important.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's a huge part of outreach. So people, there's always 2 people there at any given time, sometimes 3 staff people are there. So somebody is available to walk around and just sort of, it's a fine balance between being intrusive in people's personal space, but if you stick to the main paths and say, hey, we're Berkeley Food and Housing Project and we're here, and does anybody want anything, or does anyone want a snack? I think at this point, the majority of the residents have been engaged, know who we are. So if there's 65 to 70 residents, we've probably engaged about 55 of them. So folks know that we're there, and so we'll sort of do a reminder as we walk through, and then people can come as they need to.
Do you see this as kind of stages? So if they're trying to get ID right now, is there a way, does that lead to getting housing? Because it just feels like we're trying to provide housing and that's not happening.
Right. I think, as all the speakers have talked about, and as you all know, it's such a complex issue, why people are homeless, what keeps them homeless, what moves them out of homelessness, that there's really no kind of quick fix or simple solution. So absolutely, an ID is a very tangible first step towards that. It's definitely something that a person would need to move into housing. Motivation to move into housing is an intangible, and I think that is developed over time with the relationship, and hopefully I think that actually is what we've been very successful at doing in the last 2 months, is developing relationships, starting to build people's motivation to make changes.
And if we had members of the community who would step up and offer transportation to appointments, that would be helpful.
Absolutely.
Also offering various items once people do decide to move into a place, that they would help to furnish that. So that'd be very helpful if members of our community could contact you or Penelope about being able to offer those things.
Absolutely, and the Solano Community Church has already offered and provided some of that assistance as well.
I agree with that. I'd like to know, because I have things I could donate, but how do we get to know about it? So somebody needs to be in charge of helping us figure that out and let us know.
Right, so the flyers for the outreach, which I saw you have some in your lobby, which is great, have the contact name for Joe Furlot, who's the program manager who's overseeing this. So it has his contact information and the case manager's contact information. So they would be point people for donations and assistance.
I have lots of little questions. I'm happy to defer.
How do you see the continuation of the contract working, and what will you do as we move forward?
Excuse me. Some of that will depend on how you decide to move forward with the vote that you just took, and we would want to work in close collaboration with you if you're, as you're enforcing the no camping ordinance, so that we're sort of working in, I don't know if partnership is the right word, but we would want to be informed about any actions that are happening. Other than that, we would continue to work with the folks. I think there's a lot of folks, as I said, who are already engaged with us, so it's really continuing that process. So taking people out to see apartments, helping people continue to work on getting ID, thinking about various ways that people could sustain those apartments. We do have funding, as was mentioned, to help people get into apartments and to sustain them over a period of months until they're able to sustain themselves, but that's really important. We don't want to put people in housing that they can't sustain. So more of that relationship building, moving forward work.
If Albany wanted to open up a storefront or do something with a temporary type of place to meet, do you have experience with that, or could suggest how the community works together? Or, I mean, I know we have some people in a group that are already interested in that. So anyway, I'd like to see a community way of outreaching, and I don't know if that's really your job or our job at some point, but that's certainly something that seems like it would be a good idea.
You're talking about sort of like a drop-in storefront? Yeah, I mean, that's outside the scope of our current work, but certainly is something that we could talk about it. We have a drop-in center as part of our agency. We have a very large drop-in center with a variety of services for homeless individuals, so we have expertise.
That's in Berkeley?
In Berkeley, yeah. Right.
I do remember visiting Pasadena once. It's a pretty upscale town, and back behind the Whole Foods, a really big, scary Whole Foods, there was a similar drop-in center, and there was lots of folks there, and there's obviously a need in it. It did seem to work pretty well.
Yeah, I think the drop-in model is a well-proven model for engaging people.
So had you thought about that for Albany?
That's a little bit hard for me to answer. I'm actually very new in my position, so I don't know all the sort of background of things. My understanding is that the council was specifically interested in literally in outreach, like boots on the ground, in the bulb outreach. So that's the direction that we took at this point.
Any other questions?
Well, yeah, I have some little ones. So how many people are we talking out on the bulb and then in the rest of the city?
Well, Joe, who's the manager for this, who's overseeing this program, is estimating anywhere from 65 to 70 folks who are out in the bulb.
And what about the rest of the city? Do we know?
I don't know. 62.
62, okay. And is this population pretty stable? Are the people coming and going?
Right. I think the folks that are there now. I do think, as someone alluded to in the speaker's comments or somewhere, that there have been some newcomers. So my understanding from Joe is there were maybe about 50 folks that were kind of a core group, and there have been newer folks added to that. I don't know the specifics of that, I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm. And tell me a little bit about long-term either government funding sources for homeless people, if you would, SSI, SSDI, and there used to be a state program called General Assistance. I don't know what they call it now, but are all those still available? And what are the categorical requirements? I used to work for Department of Social and Health Services, and tell me about the categorical requirements.
So general assistance is what is often referred to as welfare. So that's usually for when it's called general assistance, just for single adults. For folks that have disabilities, they might qualify for SSI or SSDI, which pays quite a bit more than general assistance. Nothing pays what we would consider to be a living amount of money.
And what about SNAP, the modern version of food stamps?
And food stamps are, yes, still in existence. I don't know, that's a good question. I don't know if there's any residents at the bulb who are getting food stamps.
And the difference between SSI and SSDI?
Can't tell you.
18 people out there received SSI.
Please.
And what's your sense of, well, obviously this hasn't been real successful yet, and maybe we need to give it more time, but what are the impediments? There seems to be two theories. And I'm not competent to judge which it is. One theory is that we just need to give it more time, it's coming together, it's coalescing, and the other theory is people are just sort of being obstinate and digging in their heels, and they think if they just say no, they'll be able to stay there. So is there a sense that, do your workers, the boots on the ground, have a sense about this?
I don't know that either of those are 100% true or not true. I think it's really hard for people to make that level of change in their life, and I think logistically, it is not easy as a homeless person to move into housing, to pay for housing, right? So the biggest impediment would be that people need to be able to pay the rent, and that's a huge barrier, obviously. And then all of the other things that people mentioned that are pretty common barriers for folks who are homeless for a long time, about it being such a shift, or leaving a community that they have found and leaving a sense of safety in an encampment to move away and to face that kind of isolation and other challenges that people might face living inside, especially if they haven't lived inside for a long time. So I don't know that I would characterize it as people digging in their heels. I think there are a lot of folks that are ambivalent right now about what they want to do. And I see our job as helping them kind of move along that process.
And how does that work? Can you tell us some success stories of how that's worked in other towns and cities in the East Bay?
I don't know about specific success stories. I can tell you in general, sort of the philosophy behind homeless outreach is that it is an engagement building process that happens over time, that starts with meeting very immediate needs like an ID, or I think a resident needed to go to a dentist appointment and we took them to a dentist appointment. So it starts with that sort of trust building. You have need X, we're going to meet need X, and then gradually moves towards larger goals. I don't know if that answers your question, but.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, is there anyone, do you have cards? Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
So I'm going to call 3 at a time with the previous item, and if you haven't submitted one, please fill it out and submit it now. First 3 is Robert Chasty, Robert Lieber, and Lisa Kleinbach.
Mayor and Council, sorry for having to speak twice. I support the Council, I support the direction of staff that you extend the contract for Berkeley Food and Housing. I thought that Lara's presentation was helpful and informative. I'm happy to hear that they've been out there and had contact with as many people who are willing to have contact as possible. I think that's very important. And I think that when we're dealing with this, the issue of homelessness is complicated, and each individual may have a separate motivation for what they do and why they do it. And so in the long run, it's much more helpful for the city to be able to do everything possible to help people who are homeless to get into homes, to get into a community, to get back integrated into society. One of the things, or the quarrels I had with the earlier effort, the Homeless Task Force, I didn't see over the course of, say, from the point they started to now, it's more than a year, I think, there was no effort to, or no movement to getting people actually into housing. There's a lot of discussion and a lot of looking at it, which I respect and I think is important. But it seemed to me that there's an urgency to getting people into housing, and I think that's right. And I don't think the bulb is the appropriate place for homeless people to be living. Certainly it's not an appropriate place for campers, and camping should be stopped. That's a separate issue. But truly dealing with the homeless issue, I think the city has an obligation to try to do as much as possible to get people who are homeless into the services they need to get them back integrated into society. And that should be the goal, not to support and sucker them into some kind of an environment that is outside of society, but to integrate them back into society so they can have meaningful ties with the rest of society and even meaningful work. And that should be part of what we aim for. So thank you for doing this, and I'm proud to see the city putting the money into doing it. I hope you extend their contract, not only for December, but if necessary, longer.
Thank you.
Lisa? J. Michael Reagan, Genevieve Wilson, and Bradley.
Good evening. I'm a resident of the Bulb. I've been working with Berkeley Food and Housing to try to find housing. I am gainfully employed. I pay taxes. I vote. I'm integrated into society. I've been working with them. I've been seeing them at least once a week. Being that I'm working now, I can't see them twice a week because I work Tuesdays. And we've been working fairly hard to try to find me a place to live. And they told me today that it's probably going to be 3 weeks until they can find me a place. So if I'm trying hard to get out of the Bulb, the people that are trying lesser than me or are not trying as hard are probably going to take a lot longer than 3 weeks. So I think that you might want to extend the contract with Berkeley Food and Housing. Might be a good idea.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I'll try to be brief. I want to echo, I think, what Pastor Hoffman said about it being a critical window. I think there is a coalescing happening that could be capitalized upon for real collaboration. Something along the lines of what Portland did might be amazingly possible, you know. Yeah, I'm going to tell you this. I was homeless myself for a while, and it was voluntary at first, and then it's really true. It was only 2 years, all told, but it's true that once you're out, it's very difficult to get back in, and the longer you're out, I think the more the truer that is, you know. So for me, I'm a white woman with a college education and a lot of chutzpah. I have a lot of energy, and I'm going to find a way to make it work, right? I wasn't out that long. You know, my identification was still intact. I have a loving family who wanted to see good things happen for me, you know, but part of the reason I was out was because I had been living with some functional addicts. And it was like, well, it's true what people say, you know. There are situations in which being out is better than being in. Addiction is not just on the bulb or on Shattuck. It's in 4 walls. And so what do you do with that? Housing solutions are relationally bound. Eventually, a woman that I knew through a church heard my story, and she said, "That's so romantic that you would do that you would put yourself out like that to relate to people." And I thought, you are the one and only person who's ever characterized it that way. And she said, "You know what, I'm gonna get you this lease." And that's why I am where I am in West Oakland now, because she said, "I'm gonna get you this lease." And she went to bat for me with the slumlord owner of the building that I now live in, that thank God is owned by somebody who actually cares about it now, because it was purchased, right? But boy, that's a story, you know? But had it not been for a relationship with someone who said, "I believe that you are trustworthy and that you are moving a direction of health, and because of that, I will offer you something for a next step," I wouldn't be under a roof right now. So, go with God with this.
Thank you.
Next 3, Osha Newman, Eliza Della Piana, Eric Larson. Julie Winkelstein, Signe Matson, Dan McMullen. Bill Dan, Norman LaForce, Amber Whitson.
I got some demographics here for you guys. Out on the bulb right now, there's 62 people. 8 of those people get GA, unemployment, or have a salary. There's only 2 people that get a salary right now. 36 people out there don't have any source of income whatsoever, and Berkeley Food and Housing Project has been telling people who they've been trying to house, who've been trying to get housed through them, that they are prioritizing people with an income, which means they are prioritizing 8 and 18, which is, well, there's 36 people that aren't priority to them because they have no income whatsoever. Because that 3 to 6 months of free housing that was supposedly promised at the kickoff meeting, right, was only for people who can pay the rent on their own beyond that 3 to 6 months. 36 people out of 62 will have nowhere to go because they have no income yet. Berkeley Food and Housing Project isn't trying to get anybody SSI or SSDI, which there is 18 people who get SSI or SSDI. That's 18 people that should be prioritized if all 18 people want housed, or if there's somewhere that all 18 people can live. There is 40 pets out there. 40. I could name most of them. I can tell you what virtually all of them look like. There's 24 dogs, 9 cats, and 6 kittens. There is 35 disabled people out there. There is 21 people that are not disabled and want and are looking for work. 21 people. They aren't trying to get them work very hard, otherwise they'd have jobs. There is quite a few people out there that are trying to get housing, and there is even more people that have been getting scared off because nobody's getting housing, and they're starting to think it's a joke. And after tonight, I'll bet you anything they'll be far less interested in housing because they're going to think you guys are working against them. There is only 6 people that are not disabled and are not looking for work. There is 39 men and 23 women, and out of the ones that get SSI, there is 6 women and 12 men. I just thought I'd give you guys some demographics before you go saying that people don't want housing and that people are this, people are that. You don't know. You know why? Because you've reached out to Berkeley Food and Housing Project. You've reached out to everybody but us, and we're getting pretty offended. Thank you.
Thank you.
Not.
Carol O'Keefe, Bob Utos, Aaron Ruff.
Carol O'Keefe, Albany resident, and I apologize for talking fast. I'm going to cover 2 areas, so I'll try and get it all in. So for the first part, I'm a representative of the Albany Community Foundation, on whose board I serve. Early this year, we worked with a representative, a homeless representative, a local one, to say we were interested as part of our mission that includes social welfare. And when we heard that Project Hope had been developed, we decided to do some fundraising, and our board agreed to match the first $500 of donations. So just to let you know, we've collected over $600. We're going to hold this open a little bit longer. So we're hoping to get well past $1,200 when we do provide money for Project Hope. Not nearly enough probably, but I wanted you to know that that was the result of a community action by the Albany Community Foundation. So taking off that hat and now speaking strictly as a private individual, I'm very grateful for the questions that were answered by the representative from Berkeley Food and Housing and by Amber, because I was feeling the absence of an awful lot of very basic information. You keep saying it's complicated. It's actually lack of data, which makes it really hard to be comfortable in any sort of a decision-making process. And having the census sort of information Amber and others were providing is good. I still recommend that you make a point of hearing from key people, certainly Berkeley Food and Housing and Mr. Hoffman and others in October, and get an update on what is happening with Berkeley Food and Housing. I'd be interested in seeing a staff report that would estimate what the costs would be of housing people who remain there. And I think also that Albany should be talking about structural changes, affordable housing, and what changes it needs to make in its code and other steps to make that happen. Sorry for the extra time.
Thank you, Bob Otis. Had I had time in the earlier agenda item, I would have pointed out that this item should have preceded that one, because once you realize how unfortunately ineffectual the services have been, you might have come to a better conclusion on agenda item 8.1, and I urge you to put it back on the agenda for reconsideration at your next meeting. The Berkeley Food and Housing Group people have been very candid, and they certainly were in the public meeting they held earlier. The person speaking of the housing that they could try to place people in made it clear that if we're talking exclusively about private housing, that it was necessary for people to be able to sustain the rents. And to quote him, he said, if we put somebody into housing that they cannot maintain and they end up getting evicted, we will have, quote, done more harm than good, close quote. The other thing is that I've spent 2 or 3 hours, well, several hours actually, looking at SSI law and regulations over the weekend, and while I stand ready to be corrected, it is pretty clear to me from what I've seen that the subsidies that would be offered by Berkeley Food and Housing Group would constitute in-kind income, which would require anyone receiving it to report its receipt, and it would result in a significant reduction in the benefits received. So while I'm sure it's all well-intended, and I realize that you are being well-intended, the fact is that this program is not really going to even scratch the surface, and really you need to go back to square one. You really do. And lastly, your efforts here are not a substitute for providing the social services that the city should be providing, nor a substitute for an adequate general plan or compliance with your housing element, with respect to which you are, as you all know, are grossly out of compliance. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm here enough. I was here a little bit ago. And I am not an expert on this issue. And I did not bring my my resume to let you guys know how qualified I may or may not be. But previously there was a notion of a drop-in center that was kind of being kicked about. And as a member of this dialogue, I just wanted to submit that if that were to be something that the council would be looking into, I personally would be able to volunteer a significant amount of hours and effort towards helping out with that. And I could not speak for others on this microphone, but I'm quite sure there's a number of other people that would be willing to help with that, and maybe even members of the people who are living on the bulb would be able to help out to manage that if they're looking for some sort of work. So just wanted to put myself out there for that. And that's all.
Thank you.
Aaron Ruff, and my contact information is on there.
Bob Anderson and Andrew Franklin.
Hello, Council. Now, we're dealing with solutions here, and I really don't understand when we're coming down to main solutions that we're dealing with criminals and kids. Now, what I'm trying to say is that here, what the bulb does, the Albany bulb and the community at the Albany bulb it's like a demonstration on how life could be, in a sense. What I'm saying is that how you can miss the streets and have an opportunity to be able to live a self-sufficient environment. Now, dealing with these solutions, you're not just dealing with one solution when you're dealing with the bulb. You're dealing with so many solutions, and I really don't understand how somebody, like we built ourselves up as a community. This place was built with rubbles and rocks. And now, as a community, we have the heads up if we push a little harder and take the initiative procedures to make it happen. And so what I'm saying is that people want to take that away from us and run their own community, because it's a very beautiful place. But this place is not intended for them. This is a very spiritual place. And what I'm saying when it comes to kids is that you have to look at the choice and opportunity they need. You see, people need to have that choice to live that self-sufficient environment, because if they don't, they're just going to go to jail. Now we come with solutions that end homelessness with these 10 communities, which will be mentors and help people along the way, you know what I'm saying, and build a foundation that would, you know what I'm saying, that would never be uprooted. You know what I'm saying? It's something that we need. It's your own kids that you have to look at, their decision, you know what I'm saying, what they want in life, and the people's decision, and majority should rule in the situation.
You need to conclude.
Thank you.
Thank you. Chair will entertain a motion to continue the meeting.
So moved.
I second it.
Okay, moved by Councilmember Atkinson, seconded by Councilmember Barnes, that we continue the meeting to 11:30. 11:30. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Andrew Franklin again with Solana Community Church. Everybody's staying up past their bedtime, certainly mine, thank you. Being on staff at Solana Community Church, our church's name has been in the decision to go forward and working in this housing effort, working with Berkeley Food and Housing Project and Solana Community Church. And so I'm speaking as a person who is out on the bulb, working with that community. I go out there a couple times a week. I spend most of my Thursdays out there working with Berkeley Food and Housing, and I think just to tell a little bit of what I see as an unofficial, not social worker, not housing expert's opinion, there are obstacles to overcome in finding housing that I would have never expected, and I think from my perspective, it is available housing, which is the first and foremost the biggest thing. Because if I needed to find an apartment, I would go on Craigslist and try to find it. And I have income, and it still is going to be difficult for me to find a place in a crowded East Bay that I want to live, where I feel safe, where I can afford it. And you take all of the things that make that easy for me, my internet access, my cell phone, my college education, the fact that, frankly, I'm a Caucasian male, so unfortunately that makes things easier for me. And then you work with this community of people who are trying to go through the same process. Literally, Berkeley Food and Housing are on the phone all day long with Craigslist, calling landlords, saying, okay, well, are you willing to overlook the requirement of renter's history? Are you willing to overlook the requirement for credit history? Are you willing to overlook references? And then are you willing to accept somebody who's on fixed income, who can't prove that they make 3 times the amount? And so the obstacles to get these people into housing through this regular path, which I would go through, seem very difficult. Brad and I went a couple weeks ago to look at a place, and it was great, but we missed the contact with the landlord, and nobody to show us in. And
you need to finish.
Yeah, and so that's what I see as available property. There's a lot of willing people, and we just can't find places to rent.
Okay, thank you. I need to remind the speakers that the topic is whether or not to continue the contract with Berkeley Food and Housing. So please address that issue.
Alan Maris.
Alan Maris, member of the Albany Board of Education, speaking for myself. I'll volunteer to work at the drop-in center outreach. I'm a former member of the Berkeley Albany Mental Health Commission and former member of the Alameda County Housing Authority. Be happy to volunteer to try to work through this very complicated process for the community of Albany. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak?
Thank you, Mayor Thompson and members of the City Council. My name is Rochelle Nason, resident of Albany, and I want to speak in favor of the continuing the contract, but I also want to make the point that people need to have realistic expectations about what can be accomplished. Keep in mind that the door is open. People are continuing to move in. If you follow news reports from the past several years, you look back 5 or 6 years and you were talking about roughly 10 people. A year ago, you were talking about 50. Today, 62, if Amber is right, 70 if Berkeley Food and Housing Project is right, it's not clear. If you had not decided to go forward in October, you would be looking at a substantially larger population in the spring, and that will, in all likelihood, continue. People may find housing. Other people are very likely to move in. So it's very important to continue this process to help people, to help build up people's motivation. But you also need to be realistic about what can and cannot be accomplished under these circumstances. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ed Fields again. At a minimum, I urge you to approve the resolution, but I'm sorry, Mayor Thompson, I do want to go a little bit off topic and look into the future here and talk about affordable housing and funds for affordable housing. The city has approved a development of an assisted living facility with 175 units, most of which will count as housing units. We have an ordinance that talks about affordable housing and provision of affordable housing. We passed a resolution which you later rescinded, telling that developer that they did not have to provide any affordable housing. So that is not on the books. So maybe this is a good time to think about what we can do and how we can use that project, which conservatively will probably bring in $1 million a month. It's an expensive project to run, but it will be of that nature that bring in $1 million a month to that corporation. And in our ordinance, we not only talk about provision of affordable housing on site, but also providing the city with funds to provide affordable housing off site, meaning not in the assisted living facility. And it talks about numbers of units required for low income and very low income.
Okay, bring it back to the topic.
So, well, I think housing is the issue, that the fact is that there isn't affordable housing. And I also, so I think there's an opening there to see what can be done. And in retrospect, we should look at the fact that this city had a fund of more than $500,000 for affordable housing. And because of lack of staffing, because maybe it wasn't the highest priority, we forfeited that money back to the state when redevelopment ended. And so there was $5, $6, however many $100,000 that we didn't have. So I'm saying look to the future. Thank you.
Thank you.
David Sanger, speaking as myself. This has been very illuminating to hear from everybody. It seems to me that the issue of bounding the problem is really important. I mean, if there are 62 individuals that are living on the bulb say, then the first thing is if you can I don't know quite how it's done, but I would be interested in hearing from the homeless people or anybody, how do you sensitively not allow people to move in? If there could be agreement among the community, the people that live there, of some way to not increase the population, then it's simply a question of finding place for those 62, and then 61, and then 60, and 59. And I think that if we extend the contract for a period of time, and if it takes time, that's not the end of the world. If it's simply a question of one by one, individually working with people until the last person moves. But it takes the community also agreeing that they're willing in principle to move on. Community is great. Public art is great, but there are other places you can do community and public art. So I just think that if the council accepts the principle of gradualism and the homeless community accepts the principle of limiting the number and preventing other people from coming in and then gradually finding a place for people one by one, we might have some way to work it out over a period of time. Hopefully it won't be forever, but I suspect it won't be if there's a lot of goodwill, which I'm hearing in different parts. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening again. My name is Paul O'Curry. I have two questions. One is, as somebody else mentioned earlier, kind of wondering why this topic did not come up before the last topic did, so that there would have been more discussion. And the second is, we're still talking about the people who live on the bulb, and we're moving people off the bulb, and yet almost all of the conversations that we've had in the past address the fact that there are, I don't know, 20, 30, 40 homeless people who just live on the streets in Albany. So if we move the people off the bulb onto the streets, then we'll have a lot more homeless people on the streets of
We
Albany.
need to talk about, shall we continue the contract?
Yes.
Are you in favor or not?
I am in favor of continuing the contract, and not just for, one term, but we'll probably need to do it for maybe for a year to achieve all of our goals.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wants to speak to this topic? Seeing no one, we'll bring it back to council.
I'll make a motion. I move that we adopt Resolution 2013-48, authorizing the city manager to extend the contract agreement with Berkeley Food and Housing Project to continue the homeless outreach and engagement program citywide until the end of the year at a cost not to exceed $30,000.
I'll second.
It has been moved by Vice Mayor Weil, seconded by Councilmember Atkinson, that we adopt Resolution 2013-48, authorizing the city manager to extend the contract agreement with Berkeley Food and Housing to continue the homeless outreach and engagement program citywide until the end of the year at a cost not to exceed $30,000. Now, discussion. Anybody have any discussion? All right, will you please poll the council?
Councilmember Atkinson?
Aye.
Councilmember Barnes?
Aye.
Councilmember Moss?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Weil?
Yes.
Mayor Thompson?
Aye, and the motion carries. Next item, please.
Other business, reports on meeting attended, announcement of events, future agenda items. There's 39th Annual Solano Stroll on Sunday, September 8th from 10 to 6. And there's the Albany Local Week, September 22nd through the 28th.
Okay, is there any other item a council member has?
I just want to mention a meeting with East Bay Regional Parks. During the council recess, the mayor, vice mayor, and city staff, including the interim city manager, met with officials from the East Bay Park District and state parks to discuss transitioning the bulb into the McLaughlin East Shore State Park. It was a productive discussion that resulted in identifying next steps towards the goal. The first step is a memorandum of understanding between the city and the district to outline the path to planning and follow through on the transition. The goals and policies in the East Shore State Park General Plan will provide a framework for planning and other actions needed for the transition. Staff of the two agencies are working on preparing the draft memorandum of understanding and a request for proposals for professional services to prepare a transition plan to present to the City Council and Parks District Board.
Any others from the council? The chair will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.